as quickly as possible.
You're live now. You're live on internet.
John tells me I'm now live on the internet. So hello to everyone who's watching us on the internet, a live stream tonight. And we also invite you to tweet about tonight. For the last 2 years, we have managed to get this event trending on Twitter in Canada. So please feel free to tweet. Invite your friends to watch us online. Go to CATA.ca and you'll find a live link there. And if you do tweet, we ask that you use the hashtag CATA Gala 2019. Amazing to think it's the 34th year for this. And tonight we'll take a look at where tech is. We'll take a look at where CATA is and where it's headed. We'll listen to some really compelling guest speakers addressing healthcare, cybersecurity, AI, some pretty hot button issues in the tech sector these days. Show of hands, how many of you, this is your first time at the awards? John, don't try and get away with that. Welcome to the Capitol. Your tax dollars help to keep this city looking great. We like to say that it is everyone's city, so we hope that you get an opportunity to look around if it's your first time here. Tech, by the way, is still strong in Ottawa, number 3 behind government and tourism. And just last month, the Ottawa tech sector added nearly 1,000 new jobs. So it continues to grow. Sometimes I think Ottawa keeps their success in tech hidden a little bit from the rest of the country, but we're still doing great. How many of you are aware that this is the 30th anniversary of the web? This year, 30 years since it was invented. Tech sector is right up on top of that one. I was shocked when I heard that. 30 years, and I think of how long I worked in journalism without the advantage of the internet. In fact, I remember not long before I left journalism, one of the new fresh-faced reporters said to me, "How did you ever do this job before the internet?" And I had to think about that for a minute. It was a different way of doing the job. By the way, this great tool of the internet, here's a fact about the top 3 things that we use the internet for. First is communication. It could be email. It could be Skype. It could be almost anything. Sorry, that's number 2. Number 1 is I didn't put it down. Well done. Well done. Second is communications. Third is entertainment of all kinds, usually watching video. Fourth is shopping. Great uses for the internet. Now, one of the things that CATA has done over the last year, and I'm sure John will elaborate on this, is taking the approach of Industry 4.0 thinking. And John has been very diligent about using the internet and all of the tools to get the CATA message out there. Now, John, in fact, has a reach of about 3 million people through his social platforms. It's a pretty respectable showing. Congratulations, John. And one of the things that he's going to be doing is getting in touch with all the winners after tonight to line up video interviews with you to talk about your success, secrets to your success. And he'll be posting those on his Tech Now video channel, which has dozens of fascinating videos. You know, after 40 plus years in journalism, 5 years in public relations, and now working for a tech company, the one thing I've learned is tech never slows down. There's always something new. It's always go, 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 go. However, I have to say, I think the industry is at a point, a very important tipping point. I see so many stories, so many comments that big tech has become a critical term. The tech giants are not viewed favorably all the time. I've seen stories where people are referring to the tech companies as the modern day robber barons, running over their employees, running over users in order to make profits. They may not be doing that all the time, but certainly the public perception is changing, and I think the industry is going to have to address that and deal with it. As Wired magazine put it just yesterday in an article, technology has had some grim effects. We are addicted to the dopamine rush of social media. We thoughtlessly carry surveillance devices in our pockets. We are being watched, overheard, and recorded for the sake of commerce. And we are allowing the very nature of truth to be turned on its head. There are increasing calls for regulations. The United Kingdom is looking at antitrust actions against tech firms. The EU is looking at more privacy controls. Canada is looking at how Facebook has broken our privacy rules. And Facebook, of course, has become the target company for bad news tech. They seem to have been able to do just about everything wrong. Just recently, of course, Mark Zuckerberg said, privacy is our new watchword. Glad to hear it, because it didn't exist in the past. I think a lot of companies will have to deal with privacy and security. And if they don't, then a lot of users will continue to go away from social media. They will have less faith in using the internet. And I'm not sure that that's a good thing. How many, show of hands, how many feel that Facebook and perhaps some other tech firms are in need of some controls? It's beginning to change. How many have cut back on their social media use? Yeah, I saw a survey just the other day that 80% of Americans that were surveyed said social media has become a waste of time for them. The social media companies are going to have to deal with that. And on a political front, you've got the likes of Elizabeth Warren and other presidential candidates taking a run at big tech. It's become a valuable political football for them. They can make points by being critical of the tech sector. That the big companies, they say, are unfairly crushing competition because they run the platforms and they gather the data, and that gives them a marketing advantage against their opposition. Or they can be just like Apple and kick out the apps from the App Store that compete with Apple's products. Apple, of course, says it was just a coincidence that they pushed those apps out. I think tech has suffered an image hit because of all of the security concerns that are out there. And we'll have more on cybersecurity later tonight with Canada's top cop working in that field. Many believe that tech, and particularly the smartphone, is being singled out as hurting our children, robbing us all of time. It's a fantastic device. We, I think, still have to learn how to use it the best way possible. Mental health experts are saying that they've coined a new phrase, the age of rage. And despite all of the social possibilities out there, the social connections, there are more and more people who feel isolated and alone, and they're angry about it. So again, I think tech has to look at the effect of their technology on people and try to mitigate that. You know, it's those who study the rich in the United States and how they spend their money and how they spend their time. The rich are now spending their money to, for example, send their children to schools that promote the fact that they don't use a lot of screens. They go the old school way, face-to-face teacher and student. They are spending their money to be able to get more human contact. What do they know that we don't? Despite all the negativity, tech continues to do some amazing things. Tech keeps making money. We'd love to invest in them. There's been an explosion in IPOs, some amazing earnings numbers. For example, Huawei, 1 quarter, their most recent quarter, revenues $27 billion, and that's up 39%. Not bad for a company that a lot of people are not happy about and are concerned about their security situation. Now, Uber decides to fly in the face of all of that and goes with their IPO, and they've now become the worst IPO ever on the US stock exchanges. People really wonder whether Uber can ever make money. But we've had Zoom, Slack, Pinterest, WeWork, PagerDuty, all going with IPOs. And in fact, PagerDuty, they had a surge of 60% since they went public. The investment people are speculating that this year could see more new stock money, more IPOs than there have been since the year 2000. And we all know what a great year 2000 was for tech. The start of the decline. Now, as always, I think the hunt for talent is a key to maintaining technology. And I always love to ask the question at this session, how many people view getting talent as your #1 priority as a company? Yeah, usually that's what we see, without a doubt. Now, there's been a significant rise in American tech employees coming to Canada. Don't know why. Couldn't have anything to do with the new president down there from 2 years ago. But at any rate, one thing is certain, the surveys clearly show American companies are opening up operations in Canada and bringing in the talent they need, whether it's Canadian talent or whether it's talent from overseas. That's a good thing for Canada. Right now in Canada, ICT is valued at well over $75 billion as an industry, one of the strongest drivers of the Canadian economy. And for several years now, it has been growing faster than the overall economy. Its growth rate is amazing. And I'm glad to see the politicians paid some attention. New money from the federal Liberals for innovation in Toronto, Waterloo, and Ottawa. Yes, those are the only 3 cities doing innovation in Canada. Good to see the funding, but gee, as a cynical ex-journalist, could there be an election looming? I don't know. Our theme tonight is using technology to accelerate better healthcare outcomes. And there's been astounding advances in healthcare, and perhaps tech will be the way we finally change people's behaviors on things like heart disease and diabetes. Technology truly is a miracle, but it was made by humans. It has some flaws, and it's humans who will need to fix those faults. Now, I'd like to recognize our major award sponsors that have done a lot to add their weight behind the gala and this celebration of innovation. Our sponsor host, of course, is Carleton University Sprott School of Business. Our award gala sponsors, Telfer School of Management at the University of Ottawa, TELUS Health, Lazaritas School of Business and Economics at Wilfrid Laurier University, the Peter Brogy Foundation, ICTC, the Sprott School of Business here at Carleton University, MNP, Lavarge Weinstein Law, Denton's, Mindbridge AI, My New Job Hunt, and the Diversity Institute at the Ted Rogers School of Management. That's quite a lineup. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Please give them a round of applause. For anybody who has organized an event, sponsors are just so crucial. One note to all of our winners, as I said, John will be in touch with you about video interviews and reaching out to the world. And when you come up here, we're going to have you pose just standing on the floor for a digital photo to immortalize you in the digital world. Now, the next thing I'd like to do is welcome our co-host for the evening from CATA Alliance, your president and CEO, John Reid.
Good to see everyone again. Typically, I talk about advocacy because that's what we do. We speak for the industry. We try to make constructive changes. But ever since we put in place smart templates, quick, easy, Embrace 4.0, that's kind of expanded. So we've got 16 active campaigns. That might take me a little while to do. Some of the themes of those campaigns are cybersecurity, SNRD tax changes, open data, tax commissions, crowdfunding, financial literacy, it goes on and on. And most of our campaigns are successful, so let me at least talk about one that hasn't worked out so well for me. Financial literacy. Very important. So I thought as a grandfather, I should take on a responsibility. So one of my grandsons, 12 years old, came over, and I know the first thing you have to do is set up the Minecraft game so we can play it. So immediately you're connecting with someone who's 12 years old. Minecraft, really cool. First thing we're going to do. But then I had it set up and I said, Zach, have you ever seen a stock portfolio? No, I haven't. Would you like to see one? Oh, really? It's got a password? So sure enough, I thought, this is my opportunity. Financial literacy, golden moment. Zach looked at the portfolio. I talked about dividends. I talked about the rule of 72 or how you double your money. I talked about looking at the world and trying to spot trends and then actually having a stake, maybe in companies that have developed Minecraft. A little bit of economics. I did a great job. So a week rolled by and Zach's mother came over and I was feeling and I wanted a bit of feedback. And I said, I think I really did a good job. I started Zach on the road to financial literacy. Mother said, Kate said, God, I'm really glad you raised this because Zach said, can I speak to you, Mom? I'm really worried about Grandpa. Grandpa gambles on the internet. I will not give up. Yes, we're going to broadcast your stories to 3 million viewers. We set up networks across the world. We're using the latest technologies. Actually, my 4.0 team is here over 6 months. They've come up with some great ideas and best practices. Alex, Kathy, David, the whole group. And any idea we explore, and we've adopted technologies from around the world. We actually started Industry 4.0 30 years ago when we bought fax boards from Japan. And Carol will appreciate this because at midnight I used to have them come on and broadcast during the cheap Bell Canada rates. And it was magic. Suddenly 1,000 people had our news. I thought, like I've landed. I've really figured this out. Now we're sending messages to 3 million people. It's been interesting looking at how you apply new technologies to a not-for-profit. For example, there's a tool that maps out your communications and then establishes what your optimum send times are. It then gives you a map so that you can program your communications. Impression rates went from 150,000 to 650,000. It was just this one tool. There's then a tool where you've got your first level connections in social groups. How do you send them a personal note without having to do it manually? Well, there is also a piece of software that allows you to do that. Then out of California, we did a e-petition. And we thought about this. Well, it's great to do an e-petition, but that's not what it's about. You're having people that say, we will work with you to advance advocacy. So we created an Advocates for Change group. Within 2 weeks, we had 1,500 people that said, yes, we will carry your messages forward for you. Executives that we know didn't have contact with years ago, but suddenly we had another resource that we could advance those 16 campaigns and create a better business climate for CATA. Social media, yes, it has its risks, but I think it's incumbent upon all of us to think about our businesses, how we can integrate and customize for common good, for the good of society. So yes, naysayers, but I think I'm on the glass is half full, particularly when I see what's happening in policing, public safety, digital healthcare. None of this would have been possible unless we had some of these very advanced tools and were smart enough to figure out how to use them. So tonight, you are going to be the first of 3 million people to view all of these great stories about innovation and success. I'm looking forward to hearing the stories. I'm looking forward to telling these stories to people all over the world because I think Canada is just a great leader in tech. So Paul, thanks again for hosting. And now my responsibilities are over. It's Paul now.
For several years now, we've been here at this venue at Carleton University, and I think it's a fabulous venue. And just a few weeks ago, the school saw a new president and vice chancellor move into his office. Dr. Benoit Antoine Bacon, a native of Montreal, was vice president at Concordia, then vice principal at Queen's University, as well as a provost at both schools. He has a PhD in neuropsychology, and as if the current jobs aren't enough, he'll also be a full-time professor at Carleton's psychology department. Please welcome our host, Benoit Antoine Bacon.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you, John, for your remarks as well. Great to meet you tonight. John is one of our great Carleton alumni, so welcome back to campus. And I thought I should say, your grandson sounds super smart. You got what the stock market is in one go, so you should send him to Carleton. I think he's ready for that.
Did you say a scholarship?
You're funny, we'll talk. Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir tout le monde, ça va bien? Bienvenue. Welcome to our beautiful campus. Welcome to this great facility. Thank you for being here this evening. We're thrilled. We're thrilled to host this event tonight. I understand it's the 6th time that we host the event, so we have a strong and growing partnership with your organization that we want to continue to grow over time. So we're all about partnerships, and we welcome your business to campus. I want to congratulate all the award winners. Well done. Super. Thank you for your important work. We're continuing to move this country into the modern world, and what you do is important. A few words maybe on medtech or digital health, or our main theme for tonight. It's absolutely crucial for the future well-being of Canadians. The rising costs of healthcare is something that we should all be worried about, and tech is part of the solution. We're proud at Carleton to play a role in developing this area through research and through our programs. Paul mentioned that the Hunt for Talent universities are a big part of the Hunt for Talent. Research skills and leadership skills combined together in everything that we do. Higher education, key to helping Canada becoming an education leader on the world stage. So we're educating the future generation of leaders in healthcare, among many other fields, through many of our programs, bachelor, master's, and PhD in health sciences, biology, psychology, neuroscience, biomedical engineering, and much, much more. And one of our strengths is we can leverage great multidisciplinary research expertise in big data, in public policy, machine learning and AI, telecom, cybersecurity, accessibility, cognition, aging, and more. So we're part of the solution, and we're proud to partner with CATA. Many of you will know, I thought I'd plug this in, that we're completing 2 great facilities here on campus, health science building for research and teaching, and a second facility for advanced research and innovation in smart environments. So that's a facility specifically designed to partner with industry on specific themes that relate to tech and to smart cities. So we're at the forefront in that game as well. This is a very exciting time for digital health and medtech at Carleton. We're well positioned to lead. We continue to lead in our rapidly changing technology environment. We need to sort out the rising cost of healthcare for the benefit of everyone. And the only way to do this is to partner education, government, industry, philanthropy, everybody in together. I'm confident we'll continue to strengthen our bonds over time. I'll just one more time welcome you to our beautiful campus. Thank you for being here. Please have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur Bacon. Now, we continue the theme he brought up about health, and it's time for our keynote speakers. And we have 2 incredibly connected and informed speakers, both leaders at the forefront of Canada's e-health work. There certainly are areas where fantastic progress has been made, but I came across a study of 29 OECD countries where universal health care is offered. Canada is among the most expensive healthcare systems, and yet the performance is ranked at best modest and often poor. The level of care versus money spent could be better. And I think that it's quite likely that technology will help us to make some real gains here. So our guests are Ohad Arazi, Chief Strategy Officer and Vice President, Provider Solutions at TELUS Health. He has been in the field for more than 14 years, as his passion is to disrupt healthcare in a good way. He's the head of what TELUS calls Living Labs, where they work with partners in innovation units to bring new developments, and it's done in a clinical setting. And before TELUS, Ohad had worked for one of the world's top 3 cardiology firms, and prior to that, he worked with some telecom startups in his native Israel. The other speaker, Dr. Shurjeel Chowdhury, an MD, head of medical and scientific affairs at Bayer Inc. His medical specialty is infectious diseases. He was an HIV researcher for many years and works to bring real digital innovation. And he also sits on a global panel that identifies new technologies that can help improve healthcare. So I would ask both Ohad and Shurjeel to come up on stage. And since we all care, yes indeed. And since we all care so very much about healthcare, I am sure these two will provide us with some real food for thought. And put your thinking caps on, because after their opening comments, I'm going to be moving around through the audience, and we really want to hear your questions of the experts. So Ohad, lead us off.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ohad. Such a privilege to be here today. I think CATA does an amazing job of bringing some of the top technology innovators in the country under one roof. So it's truly an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. So we'll spend the next 10 minutes or so talking about innovating for critical mass. And I'll try to shed some light on how we can accelerate the pace of healthcare innovations in this country by taking a platform-driven approach. And I'll borrow from the experience of a few other industries in order to illustrate that. So let's start with the hard truth. Okay.
Good old technology.
The other clickers in the audience. Who has a clicker? It's got a big green button on it.
Yay! Victory.
This is not my
Yeah,
presentation.
this is mine.
Okay. Why doesn't Shurjeel go first? Because his slides are up there. I'm here to introduce Shurjeel Chowdhury, please.
Thank you.
Awesome.
So just, sorry about that. Wanted to thank Paul, but thank you to John and CATA for giving me the opportunity to talk about the exponential growth in computing power and how that's impacting digital health. So I just wanted to start, coming from a pharma company, we have to give some disclaimers in terms of the different hats I wear, but the opinion you're going to hear tonight is mine, not that of Bayer. So let's get started. There has been an exponential growth in computing power, and Al Bartlett said, the greatest shortcoming of the human race is our inability to understand the exponential function. I think there are some financial colleagues in the audience who probably do understand this. But if you look at Moore's law and the fact that computing power has been doubling every 18 months, what you see is that doubling doesn't really have an impact over a very long period of time. That curve is very flat. But as you get to the inflection point, which happened around 2006, 2007, things get really interesting because all of a sudden you're getting very massive increases in technology. And I thought the best way to illustrate this will be to show what has happened to our smart devices. But what it's done is, with that increase in computing power, we can miniaturize better, we have better connectivity, storage has grown exponentially, but our ability to generate data has grown exponentially. So if you then look at a comparison, we're all carrying these supercomputers in our pockets, but just look at ENIAC. In 1946, it cost $6 million. It had a memory of 83 bytes. And now we carry in our pockets these phones that have a memory of 5 times 10 to the 11 bytes. And ENIAC consumed 150,000 watt hours of power to run, whereas the phones take about 10. And then look at the, whether any category you look at, that's what exponential improvements in technology give us. Now, I'm a Star Trek fan, and just imagine Kirk and Spock coming back to Earth. They're 200 years in the future, they come back, but their communicators are already outdated because they only can do one thing. But if you look now at their tricorders, and you notice how Dr. McCoy and Mr. Spock hold their tricorders differently. If you watch the show, Mr. Spock always holds his screen facing out, so I'm not sure how he actually sees the data. but now look at those devices, and now we look at the phones we have. And these are phones that can do so many different things. It's like a Swiss Army knife. Whether it's a camera, a video camera, a compass, you name it, that capability now sits with the device. And this is what is really making them so useful now in digital health. But we're going beyond phones. Now, who in the audience has a smartwatch? It's a few, but you can see, and this is Tim Cook at his keynote last year, the watch can now capture a lot of digital health data, as he's showing on the screen there, including your heart rate variability, and including the fact that if your heart is working, it should call for help, which the new generation of the watch can do. But it's not just the watch. We now have the capability of measuring virtually every vital sign, content of your sweat, oximetry, all through wearables. But then we are now starting to come up with technology with miniaturization to make all of our drug delivery devices smarter. Injectors that inject drug, smart injectors. Inhalers are smart. Even the pills you take are getting smarter. There are chips on a pill that you take, and that they actually monitor that you're taking your pills correctly. But then the next step is these ingestibles, little capsules that can do more than just deliver medication. They can actually monitor your body. And then insertables, sensors that we insert under the skin or inside the body. You can get an incredibly rich set of data on the body, and these are already being used. We use them to help patients maintain adherence to their treatment, but also for self-diagnosis, remote monitoring, to look at disease phenotype in terms of different types of diseases that can have the same manifestation, but you can tell them apart if you can monitor the vital signs of the patient. That's the smart pill. Little chip on a pill. The FDA approved the first medication with this technology just last year, and allows through a patch to collect vital signs, but also know when someone has taken the pill. But the next generation, this is a paper from Science just this last month, and these are pills that actually have little injectors built in. You take the pill, it actually injects into your stomach, so it takes away the need for an injection. Could deliver insulin that way, or other proteins that normally would need to be injected into a vein. AliveCore has been around for a few years. You can go on Amazon and buy yourself your very own single lead ECG machine. But most recently, the FDA approved software for it that automatically, using AI diagnoses some basic arrhythmia. So you don't need to go see the doctor. You can actually put your fingers on this device. It doesn't cost very much, and your phone will give you your diagnosis. There are now approved FDA and European Medical Association approved apps that can do as good a job as a birth control pill. So there are literally in a number of diseases apps now that can have the same benefit as taking a pill. And then I'm just going to a little call out to our colleague Joe Cafazo at UHN, because I got these slides from him, and he and his team have done a fantastic job developing apps and actually doing some of the studies to show that these actually help improve healthcare. So this is his app for monitoring heart rate, but he's also been able to show that you can predict who has heart failure and how severe it is just through their smartwatch or fitness tracker. Similarly, he's got apps for patients to manage their prostate cancer, or an app called Medley for managing patients who go home and have heart failure. And it basically uses Bluetooth devices like a scale, a blood pressure cuff, an oximeter to monitor those patients remotely. In an earlier study, which he did actually with not with the iPhone, but with BlackBerries, he was able to show that you can reduce hospitalization rates of these patients by 20%. That's as good as what we get with some of our medications. But also because the phones have so much processing power now, all you need to do is attach a probe and they can become an ultrasound machine. And there's a couple of models shown there, one that is wireless, one being used in Africa, which is wired. But you can imagine in the past, it simply would not have been possible to carry an ultrasound machine to many places in Africa. But now you just can carry it in your pocket. It also means that there's a lot of information. If you have a patient who's being monitored through some of these variables, you can be generating literally terabytes of data. And indeed, if you look at how much data humanity generated, it was about 1 exabyte up to 2003, from the beginning of civilization. Now we do 2 exabytes every other year, and soon we will be at zettabytes. And there's only one measure left after the zettabyte. Then we'll have to create some new measures for measuring how much information is coming out. But what it means is that with all that data, with all that computing power now, these machines are getting smart enough to beat the best Go player. And having played Go, this is a very complicated game. But just a few headlines from the last month in terms of what that artificial intelligence can do. It can diagnose things, in some cases better than physicians. You can look at someone's eye and identify any number of diseases just by looking at the retina. Through artificial intelligence, you can diagnose diseases better looking at CT scans and X-rays. And this is technology that's already here and implemented. So artificial intelligence, we've talked about pattern recognition, machine learning. All of the data we're generating and the computing power means that everything that we have now is getting smarter. Physicians, the stethoscope didn't change for hundreds of years, but now you have a smart stethoscope that actually can tell murmurs better than a doctor can. You saw the tricorder that Dr. McCoy was carrying for diagnosing diseases back in Star Trek, but there was an X Prize competition, and this company actually won it, and they actually can monitor up to 34 health conditions using these devices. So it is just amazing what we can do. And I just saw recently this news story that the FDA had okayed this wearable device for in-home monitoring of vital signs in patients with chronic diseases. And again, it has been shown to reduce the rate of hospitalization. There are bionic eye implants. There are, most recently, sensors that can actually identify brain waves and turn them into speech. And all of that integrated means that we will be able to better care for our patients remotely. I didn't realize there was a bill here, but I also am on the board for the Canadian Arrhythmia Network, and we are implementing a platform called Virtues, which does exactly this. It connects the patients to the physician, and there's a two-way communication between the patient and the physician. And there's artificial intelligence to identify when the patient is having a problem. The physician can actually reach out and talk to the patient directly, tell them whether they need to come to the hospital or not. Smart speakers actually will make things even easier for elderly patients who don't want to deal with technology. They can just speak to technology and have things to work. Now, the human genome was sequenced in about 2000. Cost $1 billion almost to sequence the human genome. Moore's law is shown on that white line you see. The cost of sequencing the genome is the green line. And you can see that that is actually, the cost has come down faster than Moore's law, such that nowadays it costs about $1,000 to sequence a genome. It's gotten so easy that we sequence multiple genomes in the same person, whether it's a tumor, to better identify what's causing it, and the metastases that are associated with that tumor. And that means that we can now develop drugs that are very precise. Bayer's coming out with a drug that has just recently been approved in the US that works at a very specific gene fusion. It's a very limited number of patients, but if they have that cancer driven by that gene fusion, then their response rate is over 80%. It's just amazing. And as we get into gene editing, there are many diseases we will be able to cure. It also is improving our ability to develop new drugs. And we have a partnership with Cyclica through our Grants for Apps program to actually boost our drug discovery efforts using artificial intelligence. And then finally, as we generate all this data, it becomes more and more challenging to store it. Well, the body and the DNA is one of the best storage mechanisms we have. And very recently, scientists at Harvard were able to store 700 terabytes of data into a single gram of DNA. And you can see that the read-write capability actually is getting better and better thanks to our computing power, the better ability to read and write DNA code. So you could store the entire store of the world's data in about a kilo of DNA. That is just totally amazing, and it's that mixing of technology and biology, which is really the future, in that we will be able to utilize essentially biological computers to do some of the work that we do. Now, you would be familiar with the Gartner hype curve, and I always put this slide in because, of course, technology is very exciting. There's always a lot of hype, and you can see that we start with the peak of inflated expectations, the trough of disillusionment when people find out it doesn't work quite as well as it's supposed to, but then there's the slope of enlightenment. And everything I've shown you actually is trough. Pretty much everything I've shown you is already existing, already being used. And what this means, and I'll just finish with this slide, is right now, our health system is designed for acute care. Someone develops a disease, they come into the hospital, and only then actually treat them. Now, just think about the airplanes we fly in. They're sending telemetry on their jet engines constantly. And GE or Rolls-Royce can tell you there's a problem with that engine, so when that plane lands, they can fix it before it really becomes a problem. That's what these remote monitoring technologies promise, is that we'll be able to identify disease much, much faster, and without the patient necessarily even having to go see the doctor. And I think, there's example of watch dogs already. There have been at least 3 patients who are better now because the watch detected their fall or detected an abnormal heart rate and called for help. That really good technology becomes invisible. It's something we wear, it's something that is around us and we speak to, like in the smart speaker. So that, I think, is the future, and definitely not hype. Very much.
Well, hey, we have good news.
Yes.
First of all, your presentation was received by Paul Brent and myself.
Okay.
We carefully reviewed it, but Alice, our webmaster, unfortunately did not get a call.
Okay.
But we were quick.
Okay.
And now got it set up.
Right.
And I'm feeling good because obviously we're all going to live long.
Definitely.
Excellent work, and thank you, Jill, for that fantastic run through of some of the great innovations that are coming to light very quickly. That's actually a great setup for my conversation around how do we take these innovations and allow them to achieve critical mass. Because even if they've passed that clinical trough, they're still not yet in regular commercial everyday use. When you're going to the hospital, you're not swallowing that pill that has the injector in it, right? And so let's break that down a little bit and talk about what does it take to drive healthcare innovations into broad adoption, into critical mass. And let's start with the hard truth, which is where I wanted to go. The hard truth about innovation in healthcare is that although we've got tremendous societal and organizational pressures to disrupt healthcare models, we're still facing significant inhibitors. I'd say the first one is that by and large, Canadians don't view themselves as healthcare consumers, right? Unlike most other industries that are driven by consumer behavior, healthcare is by and large controlled by payers, right? These are typically institutions, so government or the insurance companies that define the reimbursement model, the payment structure for any kind of product, any kind of healthcare innovation that enters the marketplace, right? So after you convince the payers and you have a fee code for your service, and these can vary greatly between different types of payers, you now have to hit the provider community. You have to convince the physicians that this innovation has value, and they in turn have to recommend it to their patients. And only then do you actually get your innovation in front of your end users, the consumers that will use the product, right? So it's a very long road today because it's not a consumer-driven industry. The second factor that inhibits adoption of healthcare innovations is our fee-for-service model. And I like to joke that fee-for-service in Canada is like running on a treadmill, right? You're kind of running faster and faster and faster to get more and more patients through the system, but you're not going anywhere, right? You're not able to invest in prevention or in innovation because at some level, and this is a little bit perverse if you think about it, the system pays out more the sicker the population is. Right now, of course, the healthcare landscape in this country is extremely fragmented. We don't have one healthcare system, we have 13, right? So the regulatory barriers between provinces also inhibit the spread of healthcare innovations. If something starts up in one province, it's got many hurdles and many hoops to jump through in order to become a national solution. And even within a province where we have pockets of massive automation in healthcare, like for example in hospitals, at some level in clinics and pharmacies, those are all data silos. They're not connected to each other, right? So they're not able to really unlock the value even in the local provincial setting that they have. And then finally, healthcare is historically resistant to change. And many would say, well, for good reason, of course, this is serious business. It's our health, right? We have to be mindful of security and privacy and safety. And I'm not discounting any of those, but I'm just looking across the aisle and I recognize that other sectors, other industries have overcome similar challenges, right? Today, all of my banking information is in my pocket on an app, right? I can put a piece of plastic into a wall anywhere in the world and pull out money. That's a crazy idea, right? How did that come together? Through the rapid adoption of consumer-driven innovation in the banking industry. So although we do face significant challenge, this isn't all doom and gloom. I think we actually are verging on being able to get to critical mass in the adoption of disruptive technologies like the ones that Shurjil talked to us about. So how do we get to critical mass? What is critical mass? And I'd say critical mass is the stage where an innovation achieves a rate of adoption where it becomes self-sustaining and it can create further innovations, further growth onto itself. And in order to create the self-sustaining system, I believe we need to do two things. And the first is to put patients at the center of the experience, right? Treat them like consumers, which to me implies that they have choice. And that's a little bit of a foreign concept for us in Canada because we're thinking, well, they're not paying for the service, so are they consumers? But I would encourage us to stretch our thinking on this and to differentiate between value creation and value capture. We can create value for patients as consumers and empower them with choice on where, what, and how to receive the service, even if that value is being captured by someone else. It could be captured in the form of a payment from a payer, like we discussed, government or an insurer, right? So let's think of patients as consumers, even if they're not paying for the service. And then the second condition we have to create is a network effect. We have to be able to get to critical mass. We have to create a network effect between all the different actors that partake in the system. Now, that term gets thrown around a lot, network effect. Have you guys heard of this, network effect? Okay, so it's basically a system where the value of goods and services increases exponentially as more users join the system, right? So for example, if Sergio and I are on the same network, so between us, there's one connection, right? Now, if we add Paul and John to that, we now have 4 people on the network, and that creates 6 connections between the 4 of us. If we add the 4 individuals that are sitting next to John right there, we now have 8 people on the network. That's 28 connections, and so on and so forth, right? So that's how the value continues to rise. And the theory is that the more connections that you have, the more value the network holds to each individual user. Now, in 2016, the Harvard Business Review published an article on innovation in healthcare. And they had this wonderful quote in the article saying, "This internet thing, it's going to be big." No, that was a funny thing, of course, to say in 2016 when the internet was already ubiquitous. It's an even funnier thing maybe to say today in 2019. But I mean, the reality is that, I work in healthcare, you work in healthcare. For us, it's only half funny. It's actually half sad, because this industry that all of our lives in this room depend on, this $4 trillion global industry, is still dependent on clipboards and faxes and legacy instances of software that are buried in the basement of a hospital. And so to think about that, we had to go to a few other industries. And I thought the Harvard Business Review in this article does a great job of looking at a few other industries, a few other companies that have been able to disrupt their industries by taking on a network effect approach. And I'll start with Airbnb. Has anyone here ever been a host on Airbnb? No, okay, I have as well. Let me tell you, it is a crazy idea, because in 30 minutes, you convert your house to a hotel. Now, my house, my most treasured possession, I converted to a place where other people paid me money to sleep in my bed. And they did that in 30 minutes. I thought that was amazing, the level of administrative automation that Airbnb provides to convert your house to a hotel by helping you post photos, deciding the price point, establishing an end user licensing agreement with someone who's going to sleep in your bed, right? Figuring out insurance, payment, how to hand off the keys to each other, right? How to accept a deposit, how to become a vendor, all done in 30 minutes or less. So amazing administrative automation. Let's apply that concept to healthcare for a minute. We know that the administrative burden of healthcare is tremendous, right? Imagine if we could automate those same processes so doctors could be doctors instead of walking around chasing the lab results on a fax, right? Let's talk about Waze. Are you guys familiar with Waze? Did you know this company? So it's an Israeli company that was acquired by Google, and it's a community-based traffic and navigation app that basically enlists drivers as their data source, right? So as you drive around with your Waze app open, it sends data to the network in real time and allows the app to predict traffic and to offer you interventions, to offer you a better route from point A to point B, right? To suggest alternatives. Now, apply this concept to healthcare and think about how could we liberate the patient data and embrace this concept of self-reported data instead of it being buried on a legacy instance of software in the basement of the hospital or under the desk of your clinic, your primary care clinic, or on the server of the pharmacy or your insurance company. If you are able to own your data, if you are able to self-report, anonymized, of course, de-identified, of course, if you are able to provide your data into this network of knowledge, that would, similar to the traffic navigation app, allow to find better care pathways for the population, allow you to focus on better interventions for your specific condition, leveraging the wealth of data from all the people around you. Let's talk about Uber. We talked about some of their failures earlier today, Paul did, but some of their success also was driven by their ability to connect users with excess capacity in the system, right? Uber's concept started with an underutilized black limo service, and now they have an entire community of over 100 million drivers and users, right? So think about doctor's appointments, hospital beds, MRI scans, right? There are endless opportunities to Uberize healthcare, reduce waste, and optimize resource efficiency. Basically find where we have capacity and make that to where we have the need. Right, so how do we take the models of the Airbnbs of the world, the Waze and Ubers, into healthcare to create this network effect? And I contest that the main thing we have to do is develop a collaborative health system, right, which will open up connections between all the various actors and will ultimately enable disruptions like the ones we talked about in other industries, like the one Shurjil talked about, that are coming in from the clinical and scientific community daily, will allow them to achieve critical mass, right? And I believe we have to create 3 conditions for this marketplace to evolve, right? Or sorry, for this ecosystem to evolve. And the first truly is a marketplace, right? So if we want patients to be treated like consumers, we need to give them a place to shop and we need to give them choice, right? So this marketplace concept brings service providers and consumers together and facilitates the exchange of value, right? You have something to buy and I have something to sell in the context of healthcare technology. And by the way, that exchange of value, we talked earlier about consumers not necessarily paying for the service. It doesn't have to be money. For example, if you think about Waze, right? The users of Waze are getting a tremendous application. What are they paying? With data, right? They're creating a co-opetition environment with other people that are also trying to get from point A to point B. So they're providing their de-identified anonymized data. That could very much be a viable avenue for us as healthcare consumers, even if we're not reaching into our pocket and pulling out a credit card to receive a healthcare service. The other thing we need is a platform. So we need a plug-and-play approach that can leverage infrastructure, which will allow us to bring new innovations quickly and light them up on the entire network, right? So to leverage the breadth that the network creates by making it instantaneous for us to add another app. That is the beauty of the App Store, right? Is that every app that joins the App Store doesn't need to create its own privacy and security settings to define its payment structure. It's all normalized through a platform-driven approach that's highly curated. We need that same approach for healthcare applications, for healthcare technologies. I'm sure many of you have healthcare apps on your phone. Maybe we'll just do a quick show of hands. How many of you have one healthcare app on your phone? Okay, how about 2, 3, 4? Tell us health folks, please keep your hands up. 5. So many, I mean, and that's part of the issue, right, is that all these innovators start to come up and we start to have a myriad of applications that don't talk to each other. For every one that we enlist to, that we sign on, we have to replicate all of our information, sync it up with other tools, right? So how do we create that platform-driven approach that will allow the ubiquity of each app joining the system? And then finally, we really, to break down the digital silos, this has to become an ecosystem. We need an external network of users and service providers that will work together, that will establish a relationship of that co-opetition, right? So a community where the participants can collaborate with each other to enhance the learning, but can also compete with each other to drive growth, right? So if that sounds far-fetched, I just want you to know that at TELUS, actually, we're trying to bring this idea of a healthcare ecosystem to life. And we're doing it through something we're calling the TELUS Health Exchange. So just to touch on this quickly, the TELUS Health Exchange, or THX for short, is basically a platform that leverages the numerous point of service, point of care connections that TELUS has established over the years in order to pull them together to a network that delivers collaborative services like electronic prescribing, which Canada today is the only OECD nation that does not have electronic prescribing, if you can believe that, right? Electronic booking, electronic claims, all these things that we're so used to from the consumer industry, right? How do we bring them together as collaborative services that connect through the TELUS Health Exchange or through comparable networks? And I'd say that the most exciting thing about the THX is that it isn't just for our own TELUS Health products. Actually, we're opening this up to a community of innovators that can interface to our platform and then leverage the reach that we've established in order to drive their innovations and bring them forward to consumers. And we're going to hear from one of these innovators today that's receiving an award. Ultimately, that will help accelerate the concept of the pace of adoption and will really achieve critical mass in healthcare innovation. So today we heard from Shurjil about some amazing innovations that are coming down the clinical and the scientific community and also in the commercial space. And then I had the chance to talk to you about how do we bring these things to achieve critical mass. Why is it difficult today? We discussed that. And I suggested that we can achieve critical mass by creating a network effect similar to the ones that have been created in other industries like transportation and hospitality. And ultimately, I tried to lay out an approach for a collaborative ecosystem, such as the TELUS Health Exchange, which we've started our journey on. So this is far from an exhaustive discussion on the topic, but hopefully whet your appetite to engage further in the conversation. So thank you for your time today. Much appreciated.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a seat. We'll get to some questions now from the audience. And not going to drag this out because the worst thing that an MC can do is stand between you and your dinner. Now, if they serve you your dinner while we're doing the Q&A session here, feel free to go ahead and eat. Now, raise your hand and I'll come to you with a microphone and you can ask your question. I'll start it off with one question that I had in mind. My son was at the hospital, at 2 different hospitals, and of course we had to fill out paperwork 3 different times. Clearly this is a business that just doesn't want to change. It would have been great to have some politicians, ministers of health, listen to what you're saying, because the political view seems to be just throw more money at healthcare and things will get better. You're clearly saying we need to change the system if we want to make it better. Am I correct?
Yeah, maybe I can go first, share a few thoughts on that. I think one of the primary challenges, and we talked about this actually in the reception with a few of the folks, is that the reimbursement model, as I discussed, really isn't conducive to change, to driving innovation, right? In many ways, when you have a fee-for-service system, and so just so you all understand, fee-for-service means that the system basically pays out for the service being delivered, not for the outcome being delivered, right? Not for that service improving your care, not for it removing risk or removing cost from the equation, just for delivering the service. So at some level, that becomes a self-perpetuating machine, right? Because you're looking for more and more services that refer to additional services. Now, there's no easy fix, right? I mean, we've seen the United States start to adopt something called accountable care. The idea there is that the provider community, the physicians, share in the risk in both the downside and the upside of the care outcome, right? Now, in order to do that, though, you need to have very substantial population health analytics. You need to know, well, how do you value that risk? If someone is 55 and suffers from hypertension, what should be the base rate for treating them? If their condition deteriorates, what should be the cost for that? It improves. What upside should we give the physician? So not trivial, but I would say that to me, to drive innovation on a massive scale, we have to start with the right incentive structure. And I think that ultimately, back to my thesis in my talk, is that consumers will have to drive that. And actually treating patients as consumers is what will get us there. So that's at least my thoughts. I don't know if you want to talk on.
I think just to add to that, ultimately the consumers can drive it if they own their own data. And that is starting to happen in the US, where many hospitals are giving full access of that patient record to the patient. So to answer your question, if you have all of that data on your phone and you have the ability to give permission to a physician to see it or to, then you'll always have everything there. They don't need to
Go through the drill one more time.
Go through the drill, exactly.
Question here.
Yes, I have one question for you. Are we because there's risks, we read that each day, in the newspaper. So the industry is ready for that, because there's cybersecurity risk and it's huge, So I would like to hear you more.
Well, privacy and security are very real concerns, but I think it's important to recognize that if you design your software with those aspects in mind, you can greatly reduce that risk. And so it's really important that we don't use these elements as excuses not to do something. It's what I find and what we actually do through our Grants for Apps accelerator program is to really show startups that these considerations have to be taken right at the beginning. The privacy, security, GXP validation, it's not something you do after you've developed your app or your device. You do them, you think about them right at the beginning, and then you can build in these safeguards. And you can never completely eliminate the risk, but you can greatly reduce it.
Perhaps Ohad, what the question was also getting at is, and maybe the question has to be asked of a doctor, is the medical profession really serious about a change?
You know, I give the same answer. I think it's tied to incentives, right? It's ultimately tied to payment structures, right? You could say that the medical industry, like every other industry, is coin operated, right? So of course, strong incentives will drive different behavior. Now, of course, healthcare is different, right? And there's a higher calling there. But I think that the right incentive structures will also incent physicians to drive change. I see that already happening, though. I think that if you look at the first generation of technology adoption in healthcare, in many ways it was physicians turning to the IT community and saying, recreate my workflow digitally, right? Create the electronic paper chart. And now I think what we're seeing is much more, because the technology is so entrenched in how physicians are trained, they're already coming from that background, we're seeing really much more creative solutions in terms of how technology can be leveraged. And I think actually physicians like Dr. Chowdhury here will be at the forefront of adopting this with the right incentive structures behind them.
Hey, question from the floor.
So thank you for the presentation, really interesting. I guess my question would be also on risks. In terms of, if you're pushing more choice on consumers, a lot of times you're also pushing more cost on consumers. So for instance, I've used a telemedicine vendor before, and I will say it was the best $50 I've ever spent to see a doctor within 13 minutes, have a prescription, be geolocated, be able to get that, very quickly. But, pushing more cost onto consumers, do you see any risks in terms of, other entities, governments, employers, insurance carriers saying, well, if a consumer is willing to pay for this, maybe we'll stop paying for this?
So I don't think we're arguing that the consumer should pay. I think what we have to do, as Ohad said, is change the incentives in the system. Because the system right now is fee for service. It's not looking at outcomes. And there are models like Kaiser Permanente in the US or the Stanford Health System where they actually pay based on outcomes. They are able to monitor that patient, whether they're in the community or getting inpatient care. And once you start doing that, the incentive is actually to keep the patient out of hospital. We know that hospitals, although they're essential, are not necessarily good for your health. You have a risk of getting nosocomial infections, complications. So the best thing to do is prevention. And at the moment, we don't spend our money as much on prevention. Canada is one of the countries that spends the least out of the OECD on prevention. We focus on acute treatment. So I think if you get your priorities right, patients wouldn't have to pay. And the system overall would probably still be cheaper.
Question here.
Great. Actually, that's a great segue. I was going to ask about the concept. We're talking a lot about healthcare outcomes rather than health outcomes. And right now, 2/3 of our healthcare costs are on chronic conditions, many of which are largely preventable. You talked about prevention, and I'm wondering, when you're really talking about a patient-centered health system, and we're talking about prevention and health promotion, isn't that truly where the technology, I'd like your comments on how technology is going to help people remain healthy, stay healthy, get healthy, so they're actually not even consumers of the healthcare system at all.
Yeah, and I'll give you one really nice example. I was at an eye conference 2 weeks ago, and when you go to your optometrist or to the ophthalmologist, they now have the capability to routinely get your fundus photographs. You probably pat them down if you've gone to get your eye exam. But the eye is truly the window to the soul, but it's also the window to the brain, because you can actually see nerves. When you look inside the eye, you can see blood vessels. And what they were able to show is that through using artificial intelligence and analyzing these retinal images that have been taken, you can identify very early diabetes, hypertension, even Alzheimer's disease. So if you just imagine, if the system was properly incented, and when you go get your eye exam, And there's an algorithm in the back looking at those pictures and saying, oh, this person may be at risk for diabetes. And you start treating before you get any complications, before you perhaps even get diabetes. That would be the ideal. And I think the technology is getting to the place where it can allow that to happen. It will save the health system money.
Well, do you see the situation that, coming back to your idea of providing incentives, that if there are incentives, then the change will take place?
Absolutely. I think employers are a great example of that. So we talk about incentives, and I really like what you said, sir, about health versus healthcare. So employers are concerned about the health and wellness of their employees. They're not in the healthcare business per se, but they know that, for example, every hour of absenteeism costs them X, right? So they're truly fee for value buyers. We're seeing an increasing role that employers are playing in the health and wellness of their employees because they have a very strong incentive. They actually reap the benefits of increased health. That includes mental health, that includes physical health, that includes overall wellness because they have decreased absenteeism, they have higher employee engagement, they have better retention, right? Look at what's happening Amazon, Berkshire Hathaway in the US. They came and said, we're done with the public system. We're going to create our own healthcare system to deal with our employees. Together between the three organizations, they have 1 million employees. I think even here in Canada, we're seeing significant growth in the role of employers, and also back to the lady's question around costs, that are willing to take on more of an onus, more of a burden of healthcare costs, because they know they can optimize their insurance plans by focusing on prevention, and by uplifting the overall health of their employee base, they'll get much better productivity. So how do we carry forward those incentives to the public sphere? Because employers are much more of a closed system, and again, they can reap those benefits.
A final question from the floor.
Hi, just one question on, you're talking about incenting the system as to how to make the change. How would you incent the system so that it would be changing to a better model, but yet not break the bank like most people do when you end up going to the US system, where you end up paying literally, $500,000 for chronic pages and people get bankrupt because of healthcare costs?
I can go for there's no simple answer, right? So I wouldn't say that there's any single jurisdiction that has been able to fully nail this, right? We see that some of the single payer systems, so single payer typically means that the government is the insurer, right? Like Canada. So we've seen many single payer systems that achieve better health outcomes, substantially better than the US. However, they're not all necessarily really driven by fee for value. And I think part of the way to do that is to drive the incentives back, similar to the example I gave with the employment world, where if you can actually reap those benefits within the system, then you'll have a higher incentive to focus on prevention and to drive out downstream costs. So I think that's an overall concept where many jurisdictions, many countries have been trying to move towards. I don't think there's a single answer yet, but I would say what underlies all the solutions that we'll see evolve is that ultimately the consumer will have to be at the center, will have to be driven by a consumer-like economy, because the consumers are the ultimate fee-for-value buyers. They only invest in things that will give them a return.
And I just add that, we do compare to the US, but there are systems in Australia, in many European countries, that cost per capita much less than the Canadian system and deliver just as good outcomes or better. So ultimately, the system, the track we're on, is really not sustainable. At some point, if you look at the provincial budgets, there's a substantial amount that goes to health. We have to focus on prevention, and we're doing it in some areas. There are diseases where there are really good prevention programs currently in place, but I think as the technology gets there, and it may be driven by the private sector, it may be driven by the insurance companies. There are insurance companies that are actually giving people lower rates if they carry activity trackers, for example. But ultimately, the health system will incorporate some of these technologies because it'll save them.
Gentlemen, I'll give you a minute each to say your final thought, your takeaway. If somebody is going to remember one thing from tonight, what should they remember? There is hope.
I think what I would like you to take home is that the way we monitor, diagnose, treat diseases is going to change quite dramatically in the next 10 years. I'm in drug development. I can tell you drug development is going to change because we are moving to a much more precision medicine field where we are better able to identify the real disease a patient has and treat that specifically. The secret right now is, or perhaps not a secret, that even the best medication, you have to treat 30 patients so one will get a benefit. But once you can actually better characterize the patient, their disease, we'll be able to actually treat them much more precisely. It's starting to happen with many cancers where we were seeing excellent responses, and then it'll move to other types of chronic diseases as well. So we're going to see a really dramatic and I would say disruptive change in how medications are developed and how patients are treated in a good way.
Ohad?
Yeah, and I'll look at this side of the audience. I feel like we've neglected you because all the questions came from there. But I mean, I don't want to beat you over the head with the same message, but I would say at the end of the day, kind of my parting thought is to think of yourselves as healthcare consumers and actively engage in the role that you're going to play in disrupting and changing the healthcare system. It's no different than any other system. It's ultimately going to be driven by you because you're at the center of the experience. And just like Sergio said, it's not just about the economics around consumer, it's also about the personalization. Each of you are substantially different than the person sitting next to you, and there's no reason why we should treat you with exactly the same protocol, the same drug, and the same end-to-end experience. And so I think carrying that and really believing that you're empowered ultimately will drive that change. I don't think that the last 10 years will be telling of the next 10 years in healthcare. I think that the pace of innovation is rapidly accelerating.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Fascinating. Great stuff. Great stuff. So it seems only appropriate that if we begin our awards for tonight, we begin the first one with an award related to healthcare. It's the TELUS Outstanding Product Achievement Award for Mobility Health Innovation, presented to a Canadian organization for an outstanding technology, engineering development, or solution which has resulted in the production of world-class mobile health product or family of products. TELUS will be recognizing both individual and corporate leadership in this category, and I would like to ask Dave Rama, Director of TELUS Health Physician Solutions, on stage to present the award.
All right.
Well, I must use a script for this, which is against my character, but it's probably safer that way. So the 2019 Selection Committee for the TELUS Health Outstanding Product Achievement Award for Mobility Health Innovation Excellence in Canada's healthcare sector has chosen a very worthy recipient. And I will add that I've spoken to the recipient and I am really taken with his passion and enthusiasm. So much so that I feel like there's entrepreneurial opportunities for us both, and I'm not even 100% sure, exactly what he does, but he's very, very engaging individual. The 2019 award recipient is MedStack Inc., founded by CEO Balaji Gopalan and CTO Simon Woodside, both longtime entrepreneurs. Toronto-based, MedStack was launched in 2015 as a cloud automation tech company that builds and manages healthcare privacy compliance into cloud hosting tools. This greatly de-risks application commercialization, and the standardized platform can help bring apps to the market 60% faster. MedStack now provides enhanced app hosting and actively managed compliance policies in several countries. The company has raised $2.4 million oversubscribed seed round led by TELUS Ventures, with participations from Scale Up Ventures and Panache Ventures. Existing investor Ontario Centres of Excellence and several existing angel investors have also participated in this round. MedStack's mission is to enable more digital innovation to be adopted in healthcare so that cloud technologies may deliver care anywhere with smarter, more timely decisions and better experiences. MedStack founders, CEO Balaji Gopalan and CTO Simon Woodside, have evolved their solutions with the input of hundreds of digital health startups through programs including Dream It Health, the Creative Destruction Lab, and 500 startups. Over 50 companies now run their apps integrated with MedStack's healthcare compliance platform. So, after all of that, I now call on MedStack CEO Balaji Gopalan to accept this award.
Well, I too normally don't like to use a script, but I wrote one in the last 10 minutes because I realized I had such an incredible precedent to follow. Thank you very, very much. I'd like to sincerely thank CATA as well as our friends at TELUS for this really humbling recognition. And I also want to thank all of you because we are recognizing the extreme importance of applying our resources and creativity and intelligence to a very difficult problem, which I don't need to tell you more about because I think it was very cleverly and well put together in the previous presenters. But let's look at kind of where we are right now. So what Moore's Law has enabled, along with innovations, things like AI, is collaboration. And transforming the way that we think about technology ventures solving big problems. We can now solve big problems. That's the thing that really excites me, is that we've now entered this world where startups can take on the world's hardest problems. And actually, I think that's the responsibility they have. Because when you're talking about transformation, you need innovators at the edges to come into the incumbents and come into the industry that we deal with every single day and ask us to look at things differently. Not in an adversarial context, but in a collaborative context. What we do at MedStack, you know, I like to say it's kind of boring. If it's boring to most people, it's really exciting to us. We're an infrastructure company. It's under the covers, it's plumbing. You know, nobody ever talks about how excited they are about the plumbing in their house. But the things that we do in our homes is really exciting. And that's the same story with us. We're recognizing a really interesting intersection of transformations in healthcare. There are more and more startups going into this field than ever before. Every venture fund and every accelerator is adding healthcare as a vertical because of recognition of the importance of this problem. Big tech, we talked about Amazon. The stories of Amazon, Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Facebook all having a plan for healthcare. And the industry is recognizing the need for participation with the ecosystem in order to drive transformation. So I'm a platform geek. That's what I do. And I've been building platforms kind of my entire career. And the one thing I realize about it is that the role of platforms is to prevent discouragement. The thing that drove me to create this company was meeting innovators, either entrepreneurs, technologists, investors who said, you know, I was in the hospital, or my husband is a healthcare worker, or I'm a medical researcher, whatever the case might be, and I really saw an opportunity where things have to be better, but I didn't do it because it's too hard. That's heartbreaking. I'm really glad to say that the almost 60 companies we have on the MedStack platform are all driven by a completely personal mission. In usually very, very specific small areas in the healthcare industry. That's what healthcare is like. It's like 1,000 companies put together inside a hospital. It has to be that way because that's how we get to personal experiences in delivering patient care. And all of our companies, all of our customers are driven by this motivation of changing that one thing so that it works a little bit better for the next person who's in this industry. Our customers work in chronic disease, healthcare workflows, care coordination, family medicine, smart medical devices, healthcare research, and more. The common thread is it's health data in the cloud. And the number one priority we have working in the healthcare industry is protecting our patients. How can we protect our patients if we can't promise them that their data is safe? I really appreciate the question that was asked of it. Is the industry ready for privacy and security? We gotta be. This is not about going around it. This is about making sure that it's consistent, that we're transparent, and we're delivering a strong message to the public that we're going to protect their information, putting patients first, and therefore driving more trust to invite more people to participate in this economy. I care a lot about what I do. I care a lot about this mission. We're solving a really hard problem. I have an amazing team who masochistically is working with us to solve this really hard problem, despite all the people telling us that this thing might be too hard to do. How do you standardize healthcare data privacy? But we're doing it because we're inspired by all the things that we need to do and by all of you. So thank you very much.
Just a wee bit of passion there in what he likes to do. And a great job. Congratulations. Now, because we were a little late in starting, we're just going to continue right on through, and you are welcome to have your dinner. You don't have to wait until the last minute. If it's in front of you, please enjoy your dinner. Now, we have a couple of more special individuals to talk to us about some key information. First is artificial intelligence, the Impact AI Conference, spearheaded by MindBridge AI and CATA, will take place here in Ottawa at Algonquin College, May 30th. And at that point, we will be handing out the AI Leadership Award. The event has rapidly become a must-attend for those in the AI space. I'd like to ask MindBridge CEO, Ellie Fati, to come up on stage with an invitation for all of us to attend the event. Ellie's become a real Ottawa treasure. As a serial entrepreneur, he shares his know-how. He's become an expert in AI. He's just a real gem, and we're lucky to have him here in Ottawa. Ellie?
There it is. So it's a pleasure to be here. And I want to talk about the CATA alliance with MindBridge. So I know John for many, many years. I served on his advisory committee for a long time, probably 15 years or longer. But the cool thing about John, that he always learned. There'll be no grass under the feet of John. It's always going to be new things that he's doing. So it's such a pleasure to be here and talk about this partnership. And what is it all about? What it's all about is a partnership about topic that we heard the word AI probably mentioned about 15 times today. And this is just the beginning of the evening. So why is this so important? It is important because we want to do one thing. We want to reinforce Canada's position as a leader in AI. So you'll ask, are we really a leader in AI? So let me share with you some facts. There are more startups in AI in Toronto than any other city in the world. There are more researchers in Montreal in AI than any other city in the world. The Canadian government recognized that AI is a horizontal technology that is going to change everything. As a matter of fact, people, Andrew Ng, who was the former chief scientist of Baidu, identified that the impact of AI will be the impact of electricity on the world. So if you look at that, a lot of countries are rushing to add and invest. The Canadian government has done magnificent and invested so far over $2 billion. 1.3 billion went to a number of different organizations, but the most important thing, the Canadian government with the Ontario government created 3 centers of excellence. One, the Vector Institute in Toronto with Jeff Hinton, one in Rick Sutton in Edmonton, and one with Joshua Bengio in Montreal. These are the people that are teaching the next generation of data scientists, and we need them in order to be competitive. I heard the word about talent and talent shortage. We need that. Now, there is really a world race to become a leader in this. So AI, as it stands today, it's very, very new in the sense that even though AI existed for the last 60 years, there were many springs and summer and winters associated with AI. We are dealing now with the latest spring, and this spring is only about 2-3 years old. You can go back to maybe 2014 when Google bought DeepMind, but really, if you really want to look at it, probably in 2017 when AlphaGo Zero really, again, in this case, Google presented ability of a computer was developed by DeepMind to learn by itself and beat the games without needing any information except the rules. So Our partnership with CATA is really exciting because about 2 years ago, I went and saw John and told him about the exciting that we were doing at Mindbridge. And he just did a video. Come on over to my place and let's do a video. And he did the video, and subsequent to that, he's fell in love with AI, and the amount of things that John has done since then is quite amazing. In terms of having an AI directory, a lot of people that are doing the videos and so on. So, John, really thank you. You are the champion, true champion of technology for the last 30 years, and we could not do it without you in Canada. Really, really appreciate that.
You wrote the op-ed.
So we decided that it's time to recognize, as John and CATA grew throughout the year, John always was ahead of the curve. And we decided that there is something missing. We need to recognize somebody in Canada on a global scale, national scale and a global scale, that we can say, this is Canada. We are proud of this particular individual. And we decided to create the Mindbridge AI Leadership of the Year Award under CATA auspices. What are we looking for? We are looking for a champion, could be in the public sector, could be education, could be a leader in a company, but we want this individual to be advocate for Canada, to be the champion for Canada. So we are now announcing this award, and we are going to announce the leader and the recipient in the next session when we do the Impact AI conference. So let me talk to you about the Impact AI conference. We launched this conference a year ago, and our intention to make that one into a global, must-see, must-attend type of a conference. In addition to talking about Canada, reinforcing Canada's position in leadership in AI, there are two additional important elements that we want to promote. We want to put Ottawa on the map. I mentioned the three centers, Montreal, Toronto, Edmonton. But also Paul mentioned that in terms of high tech, we have 70,000 people that are working in high tech in Ottawa. We want Ottawa, we have IBM, we have Click, we have many companies that are in Ottawa that are doing AI. We want to put Ottawa back in the AI map. The next one is really important, and I was talking with one of gentlemen, anybody that has daughters will recognize at this point in time, if we look at the AI, we're going to see polarization in terms of knowledge-based versus service-based. And one of the elements that we are concerned with, that there are women right now that represent 50% of the population, and yet in STEM, they represent 30%, but in tech and AI, they represent 11%. This is not acceptable. And we are going to promote and support both girls and women in AI and technology. So next, in 2 weeks from now, we're going to have the second year conference. We expect over 600 people. Last year we had 550 and 100 people on waiting list. But you're going to see 4 sessions. And by the way, more than half of presenters are women. We have the pleasure to have Eilish Campbell is going to be one of the chair of a panel on women in AI. And we're very excited. But in addition to the 4 panels, we're going to have keynote speakers that are coming from one from California, one from Texas. And then Michael Ainsworth is going to have a number of fireside chats. We're going to announce 4 awards. One, of course, John is going to present the award to the AI Leader of the Year award. But we're also going to have 3 awards that we are presenting to women organizations that are supporting women in tech and young children, women in STEM. All of you have tickets on your table with discount code. I hope that you'll join us in the conference in 2 weeks from now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ellie. Now, our next special report tonight comes from the man who is newly promoted to the rank of Assistant Commissioner at the RCMP, Jeff Adam. He heads technical operations, which oversees things like wiretaps, surveillance, network intrusion, digital forensics, covert entry, cybercrime, quite a lineup. He'll give us a public safety, cybersecurity update and the latest on the National Cyber Crime Coordination Unit. He's an expert in cybercrime, co-chair of the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police E-Crime Committee. He is a driving force, really, in the modernization of law enforcement's use of digital evidence in investigation. So I would ask Jeff to come up on stage and probably as he did last year, scare the pants off of us about what's going on with cybersecurity. Jeff?
Thank you. I'm trying to be this technology. I have my notes on here, if I can get it to work. I don't bring anything, and I won't mention AI, except that as I was driving here in Ottawa, in a light rain, I was very encouraged to hear that AI is progressing rapidly because there was no sign of human intelligence in the other drivers around me. And the only other thing that I have to do with medical in terms of technology is for those of you who are wearing wearable heart rate monitors and you see a police car, how many false positives are you covering? You usually see the bumper go down when we see it. So why am I here? An update for you on National Cybercrime Coordination Unit. I'll call it NC3 from here on in. I'll give you a little bit of an update on what RCMP Technical Operations is doing in relation to innovation. And I'll speak a little bit about the CATA-sponsored EPIC Awards that will be taking place in November in Calgary. To start off with the NC3, National Cybercrime Coordination Unit, we got funding in budget 2018, which finally came through in 2019 to start up how we are going to deal with cybercrime in Canada. So where are we? I think I said last year here maybe that we have no idea what the state of cybercrime in Canada is. We don't know how many there is being reported. We have anecdotal reporting. We have different stats reporting different things. We recently, StatsCan, did a survey on cybercrime and cybersecurity. Now, you know, except for the people in this room, perhaps, there may be citizens out there in industry, small and medium business companies that answered without clearly knowing the distinguishing between what is security and what is crime. Fair. We're going to work with the survey and StatsCan to see if we can parse that out a little bit better. As it is, the reporting on cybercrime or cybersecurity events was very high. Now, I know that industry worldwide, $1 trillion in cybersecurity, but yet, as one of the questions showed earlier, what are the risks? What is being done about those risks? What is happening around that? And we're not at security by design yet. We're still first out the gate. And until we fix that problem, we're going to have cops that are trying to investigate cybercrime. Now, I'll go back in time to Peelian principles. Sir Robert Peel, way back in Britain in the 1800s, said that there are 3 functions for a police force, and the police force obviously has its powers on consent of the public. In those days, the public expectations were really easy. Police caught the bad guys. Bad guys went to court. Bad guys got punished. Back then, it might have been a public flogging. I'm not adverse to that. That triangle presupposed that the offender, the cop, and the judge was in the same jurisdiction, the same national boundaries, the same city, the same province. That paradigm is broken. So how are we dealing with that when we don't know the scope and we don't know where the offender are and we don't know how to get to them? NC3 is coming along. That'll solve at least a couple problems. The intent of this is design a single reporting portal for Canadians to report cybercrime. We are working with the brand new Canadian Cyber Center for Security with CSE on having one portal that Canadians go and then we'll parse them into where they need to go. A couple of simple questions. Did you get defrauded? Was it as a result of an email? Did somebody hack your systems and put ransomware on? What happened? It'll either go to a security or it'll go to criminal. So that system is going to RFI inside of the next 6 weeks. So there will be a request for information, not qualifications, but we are going to go out to see what industry capabilities exist on building that system, which will take in, parse, run through some analytics, give us some data points. The data points could be as diverse as having 30,000 people report CryptoLocker. Right now, we get that around the edges. 30,000 different people in 17 municipalities in Canada. How many cops assigned to that? We don't know. And the odds are good. They're all investigating the same guy in his mother's house somewhere in Russia. Putting those data points together will allow then the NC3 with those police partners to coordinate who's on first on that investigation. So we'd be able to take all those resources that might be partially investigating one of those ransomwares into maybe a task force that can say, we're going after that guy using all of this data. Instead of 17 different sets of cops working on it, we may have 2 or 3 or 4. And that'll be the coordination part. The intelligence coming out of this will tell us what's at risk, where, how, what's happening, what are the attacks. We can relate that to the Cybersecurity Center. We can then say, this is what's coming, this is what we're seeing, what are you seeing, back and forth. The plan is for us to be in the same building. So we'll occupy a couple floors, and they will occupy a couple, and we'll be able to walk up and down in between them to say, this is what we're seeing, what are you seeing? Ideally, some of our data systems will talk as well. There are obviously jurisdictional and legal hurdles around that, but we'll have to work on those. So we talked a little bit about skills. So we have cops, like myself, that investigate tangible, victim-driven offenses, where sometimes there's blood, or sometimes there's literally a hammer left at a scene, or a gunshot victim, something that they can grab their hands on. But I would defy many police officers, first responders in many communities across Canada to receive a call, and I think I used this, maybe I'll do it again. The mother of the teenage kid who just had the you-know-what kicked out of him behind the school, and it's all over YouTube. What are you going to do? So the first responder, the uniformed cop, shows up and says, can I see the video? And so the kid hands him his phone and says, yeah, that's me getting beat up by Johnny and all this. The cop is going to seize the phone because that's what we do. Notwithstanding the fact that that doesn't matter. That is the evidence as they understand it. We have to change that. So the funding that came to NC3 did not go to any training or educational backstopping for this. So we'll have to figure that out. We are looking around to see how many different people, companies, agencies, organizations have some kind of cyber training.
And we're going to have to be leveraging a lot of that. Of all the police forces in Canada, many of them have their own little baby courses. Like, this is the internet. This is the switch for the internet. We need to put those all together and then keep them standardized and keep them up to date and keep them modern. I think, and I've said this many times, that that's not a police function. We need to look at some other agency or organization to look at that and maintain that and govern that and help us on that. Because the last thing we are doing is keeping up to date on the latest app. Except for my hackers. They know them all. So that's the NC3 writ large. The hope is that we'll be at initial operating capacity 1 year from now, which means we'll start to take some complaints somehow, if everything comes together. Full implementation will be in 5 years, about 100 people working on this, coordinating investigations. Now, like it happened with child sexual exploitation online, we said there's a big need and a huge risk to our kids. Government responded, gave the RCMP money under the National Police Services model. They said, here, RCMP, coordinate all of those investigations. So we started getting all those in. It went from around 1,600 to 36,000 in a couple of years. Anyways, it's a little sad to be human when you look at some of these. However, there was no investigators in Canada anywhere. So we, in the CPC MAC, it's called, started sending off these investigative leads to all these agencies, Hamilton and Medicine Hat and wherever, and they were going, well, what do I do with this? I need to make some kind of capability to respond to this. And they did, and we have somewhere around 60 different ICE units across Canada. I see very similar happening as a result of NC3 getting these kind of complaints, putting a package together and sending it out. What is the capacity on the other end to receive that and actually address that? That's a good question. We need to, like I said, we need those skills. Innovation. We're not the only ones singing this song. From a technical perspective, and everything I'll say about capabilities and techniques will be under lawful authority. So as I talk and I say we hack, it's under judicial authority, or we intercept, or we surveil. Or I thought that pill thing with the little tracker on it, that's cool. How do I suck a bad guy to eat one of those? Like, frankly, and are they mic'd? Do we mic those?
I'm sure that's possible.
Yeah. Like, I'm sitting there going, like, holy smokes, I mean, notes, that was great. Yeah, that would be the utopian dream, right? And somebody said something that the surveillance is in our pockets everywhere. That goes back to the security by design again. And frankly, getting into these things lawfully authorized is harder and harder and harder. But there's lots of partners working on that. What we can do is develop those skills and techniques within ourselves. But again, industry is far ahead of many of our agencies in what is happening and what are the protocols around what is being implemented on the apps and on the devices, etc. And I'm not talking about Apple, and I'm not talking about Google, Facebook. I've met with them all, and we've had interesting conversations. What I am talking about, though, is the ability to build something like an inductive charger that will charge from 3 feet away, which would be really, really cool for us. So far, we're only about this far. But who out there has got the out-of-the-box thinking that's not a police officer, not sitting around listening to police officers as an engineer, has the wherewithal to say, did you try this? So we're not actually talking to the right people. And so what we are setting out to do with academia and industry will be to say, okay, here's some of our problem sets. Any interest in taking those on? And so we do have co-op students. We've got a raft of co-op students, and they come in, and I get to talk to them, and I usually scare the out of them at the end of their stay, because they all have to be secrecy of information and sworn. And I tell them what that means. A la Mr. Doyle, who sold secrets to the Russians. He's going to be gone for another 16 years. However, then I talk about what was your experience. And coming to work for us, those students were like, holy smokes, who'd have thunk the RCMP does this stuff? How do you break into a banker's secure box without anybody knowing? Yeah, we can do that, like lawfully authorized. A student developed that. It was so cool. Like, we didn't think of it. And this kid goes, what about this? And we're like, okay, here's 10 grand, build that. And he did, and it's amazing. And then we have other kids that are doing really, really cool programming. They're parsing out cryptological stuff that CSE would love to get their hands on. It, I do share with them. So we will be looking for outside of the policing box conversations with both industry and academia to see how can we work together. It has been my experience that the more mature companies and academic universities are at that stage where they want to contribute at a social level. They want to do good. And so, frankly, I'd like to help you help us do good. So we'll be looking at that. For the NC3, again, there will be an industry day where that same conversation can happen. That's being scheduled for the fall. And then lastly, before everybody either goes to sleep or I get too many questions, EPIC. So with CATA support, and John is the co-chair of the Cyber Council, which is half CATA, half Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police. It is got 5 buckets of things to do. Digital hygiene is one of them. How do you get police forces to work together and other areas to work with police on solving or addressing some of the cybercrime issues? Communications, there's a couple buckets that they're charged with doing. And one of those has come into the summit. It'll be in its 3rd year this year. It'll be in Calgary in November, the first week in November. There are 2 awards that have been given out at this and will be again. One is to the state-of-the-art investigation relating to cyber. So it's an Ellie Award to any law enforcement member in Canada or team that has done the cutting edge or really super cool cyber type investigation. And the other one isn't for Ellie, it's for industry. It's for a Canadian company for a product or services that furthers cyber awareness, cybersecurity, or law enforcement capability to respond to cyber events. It'll be the 2nd year of this. It was really well received last year. We got a bunch of nominations. Actually, it was difficult to separate them out, but the information's on the CATA webpage if you look up EPIC, and all that data is there for your interest and or contribution if you deem fit. So other than that, that's why a cop is standing up here. I'm not a geek, and I am alumni. I took 2 courses here at Carleton when I was taking criminology before the birth of the internet. That dates me. But I'm happy if there is a question or not. Otherwise, I trust you'll enjoy the rest of your evening. The speakers are fantastic. It's been very, very good. Thank you. I don't envy you, Jeff. That sounds like it looks like a very hard road to go down. That's an awful lot to get done. Now, back to the awards. As a former journalist and winner of this award many years ago, it's a near and dear one to me. The MNP Excellence in Science and Technology Reporting, presented to a journalist or a writer who has raised the public profile of science and technology and contributes to building a culture of science and technology in Canada. I'd like to ask Sean Murphy, Regional Manager, Partner, Consulting Leader for Ontario and Quebec of the Chartered Accountancy firm MNP LLP, to present the award. Sean.
Thank you, Paul. And as well, I brought a script to the table, and like Dave, it feels very awkward to read this, but I also know that in about 20 minutes we've got a tip-off that we probably all want to start paying attention to, or at least some of us will pay attention to if you don't know what I'm talking about. So it gives me great pleasure tonight. C'est un grand plaisir d'être ici ce soir pour annoncer le célébrant pour la sélection de notre devoir ici ce soir. So the 2019 Selection Committee of the Excellence in Science and Technology Reporting Award chose an incredibly worthy recipient. And the 2019 award recipient is Francis Alain, a reporter with the Journal de Montréal. And we can say that Francis has a young career, but with a lot of experience. He has specialized in high tech and economics and has been a journalist for over 10 years. And after having completed a master's at McGill, he worked at Radio-Canada, CBC, TC Media Nouvelle, and then opted for a newspaper career. He has won la bourse avec l'Association des journalistes indépendants du Québec and Le Devoir. And Francis was also assistant editor-in-chief in electronic media of Première en Affaires. Francis started his career as a freelance journalist working for the television channel Ici Radio-Canada, where he developed a passion for economics. And he has conducted interviews that are important and that have worked or have marked him each in their own way, including former ministers Jean Charest and Pierre-Marc Johnson. Manon Brouillette, who is the president and chief executive officer of Videotron, Marie-Josée Lamotte, chief executive officer of Google Quebec, and economist Mohamed Yunus, who won the Nobel Peace Prize for his concept of microfinance. He now writes for America's largest French daily, Le Journal de Montréal. From CEO to workers, Francis Alain thinks the best way to understand the new tech industry is to take time to listen to all of them. I bring you tonight, and I'd like to thank and welcome and congratulate Francis Alain for this award. Please, Francis.
Hi, how are you? Well, first, thanks to the CATA Alliance, John Reed, and I would like to thanks to the team. It's important, the team, that you're in business, so without the team, you can do nothing. There's nothing. So, Cathy, I spoke with Huguette too, so it's very important. So, yes, in your company, you have a lot of things, you have a lot of things to, you have a lot of things that happen in our lives today. You have to deal with fake news. You have that in your company. Yeah? CEO sometimes when I discuss with them, they're telling me, well, it's not what I don't said that. Why did you write that? I said, well, you tell that to me, so I wrote that down. But we have fake news, so it's difficult, to deal with that. We have a lot of stuff. So I think the best way to continue and to write, good stuff is to give interviews, to talk with journalists. It's very important because here in Ontario, there is a crisis with journalism. That. We have that in Quebec too. So I think the best way to to develop that culture is to continue. Okay. So sometimes you don't like that because we go to your plants and we're talking with the workers and you don't like that. Then your communication is saying, well, you don't need to step down. You can't talk with the workers, but we still do that. And 2 minutes after, we're calling the CEO, and the CEO said, "Why you don't talk with us? It's okay, we're open." I said, "Okay." So, but you have to be very critical to the industry, and I think I accepted that prize because when I talked with the team, I realized that this industry was quite mature. You like the critics, so I think it's important to to the pro and cons. So I think it's important to continue. And you will continue to be mature if you continue to speak to the journalists. So I think it's quite important. So continue to do that. As you know, in Quebec and the province, one Quebecer on two read the Journal de Montréal. So if you have a scoop for 3 or 4 million of readers, call me. I will be quite open. So thanks a lot, and continue your good work. Thank you.
Congratulations, in a great market to work in, Montreal. A lot of technology on the go there. It is much more than SNC-Lavalin. Our next award, the ICTC Award for Strategic HR Management. And this is all about talent, presented by, or presented to the company or organization that enhance their performance and reputation by leveraging human capital. The winner will have led the organization, effectively providing leadership on HR issues, contributing to business growth, and communicating the value of HR. I'd like to ask Jamie Darch, ICTC board member and director of Jamie Darch and Associates, to present the award. Jamie?
Thank you very much, Paul, John, and the Cattle Alliance. It's our pleasure to be here to present the award this evening. I have to come clean after all the discussions we had. I am a Carleton alumni, but this university is much different looking than when I came. So I kind of knew from being here years ago how to drive towards the river based on the location. But then I got into the parking lot and realized I don't know where the Richcraft building is. So I pulled out my phone and realized I had Google Maps. And I was able to get me to the building. Now, getting up and down the elevator, finding the right floor wasn't as easy and go floor by floor. But, it's great to be back. So on behalf of ICTC and the board, I'm very proud to be here tonight to award the ICT Award for Strategic HR Management. Our mission is strengthen Canadians' digital advantage in a global economy, and I think most of us in the room share the same goal. We do a lot of great work, and the board is very proud of the accomplishments of the long-standing organization, from labor market information to assisting in policy development, new technologies, etc. So it's definitely a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be on board. We're delighted to select IBM Canada for the award this year. It's about a significant focus on women and girls. And I always feel awkward saying the word girls in technology, but as I get into this, I felt more comfortable when I looked at the actual initiatives. There's two initiatives we wanted to highlight, and very near and dear to my heart as well. I have a daughter in STEM, and so very proud of that. But one initiative is IBM STEM for Girls. And it's an initiative, it's very exciting because, you know, it's, and I think many people have said that, is that it's about awareness and understanding the opportunities to get a chance to go out and learn about what is Internet of Things, what is cybersecurity about, what job opportunities might there be out there for me, and also to have fun when they learn about this, to understand that it's not such a boring choice or something they weren't aware of. So, you know, maybe these girls won't go into STEM, but at least they know about it and the choice is there. The other program, and I think this one's really exciting, and when I saw it, I went onto the web and did my own research, and I was very impressed with the material found on the IBM website about it. But it's STEM reentry program for women, and I can really relate to that because I've worked in retraining programs. But when I started looking at it and thought about it from the two sides, is that for someone who's stepped out of the workforce for various reasons, it's tough to come back. You feel like you've missed something. You're not up to speed on skills. You may not have the motivation or feel that you're confident to come back into the workforce. And on the other side, the employer is looking at you saying, well, there's a gap in your employment record. I'm not so sure how's this going to work. This program, I think, is outstanding. It's a 12-week program that's paid. It provides the opportunity to get people who are already trained in the area of STEM back into the workforce, tune up their skills a little bit, build confidence, and then get back out there and hopefully get a job pretty quickly. So great programs. Very happy to select IBM for this for those reasons. And you know, it's so critical to get that job entry back in and get into the workforce and then go on with the career. As you know, IBM is a world leader in the digital landscape, and so you know, we're very proud again of them stepping down this route to create these programs. And I'd like to call upon Krista Shabata from IBM to receive the award.
Well, thank you very much. And I actually have to say that it's interesting as I come up here as the first woman who's been at the podium, that it takes us until what time is it to get a woman at the podium? Yeah, no, there'll be more, but just something that when you put that lens on things. So thank you very much to ICTC for recognizing the work we do. What the work you do is incredible, and we're really happy to be part of that. Thank you, CATA, for being champions in this area as well. So just a little bit to let you know more about what we're doing. I actually lead public affairs for IBM Canada, and I always say I have the best job in the whole company. And that's because for years and over 100 years, IBM has led in the diversity and inclusion space. But about 5 years ago, our president of IBM Canada, who's a man, has 2 daughters and took a step back and looked at some numbers and just basically said, we have to change this. IBM is a leading employer in the ICTC space in Canada, and we can't sit back and not do anything. So they created a special, what was supposed to be a 1-year assignment to look at what we could do in the space of HR as far as women in tech. So that's when I came on. I moved from a current role in IBM and moved into this to be a special project. Well, into that project, we realized that we had the HR department to worry about what women did once we got hired into IBM. We had the recruiting department to make sure that we recruited diverse candidates. But where we were lacking was the pipeline. And if you look at numbers, only 18% of engineering grads in Canada are female. We have not changed that number in 25 years. We need to do something different. So our IBM STEM for Girls program was launched with a focus on the pipeline. So we need to start working with girls as young as grade 6, 7, and 8 to make them realize they belong. Cybersecurity is one of the fastest growing businesses and employment opportunities in the world. 10% of cybersecurity jobs are held by women. We need to change this. So I'm proud to say that since we launched in March of 2016, we've had about 34,000 girls across Canada go through our STEM for Girls program. And we hope that at some point, that as they get older and we are partnering with high school programs as well, that we see these girls and we can help change the numbers. The other really important thing about this is that all of our programming is IBM driven and IBM delivered by IBMers who have day jobs but believe in this cause and get out and volunteer. So that's that program. And then the other program is we're excited to say that on an ongoing basis, we will be welcoming women into positions at IBM to spend 12 weeks with us to realize if they want to come back into the tech field, that they can be in a secure space, in a space where we realize that it's not just about their technology skills anymore, it's about their confidence, it's about their belief in themselves. And so we're trying to create an environment where they feel like they want to come back. So that's the couple of things we've been recognized. We're proud to be leading in this space, and thank you very much for listening.
Congratulations to Big Blue. Our next award is the Sarah Kirk Award for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. The award is presented to women who have shown outstanding technological innovation and corporate leadership and have helped to advance Canada's high-tech industry. This award aims to create innovation, entrepreneurship, and positive role models for women in Canada's tech sector. I would like to ask our next woman up on stage. It is the 2018 Sarah Kirk Award winner, Fawn Anon, President and CMO at IT World Canada, to present the award. Fawn?
Thanks, Paul.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. Everybody has a hard time with my name. It's Annan. So it's from the parish of Annan in Scotland. So people just get stuck on the NNAN. Hi, Krista. So just before I actually get into the Sarah Kirk Award, I just wanted to say, hands please to Mr. John Reid, because he just started today the Sarah Kirk Women in Tech Political Caucus, formed to advance diversity, career advancement, and mentorship. And it's housed by former Sarah Kirk winners. So I look forward to working with Dr. Wendy Sukier. So the Sarah Kirk Award Program for Entrepreneurship and is chosen by the selection committee, actually goes to Dr. Wendy Sukier, Professor Entrepreneurship and Strategy, Ted Rogers School of Management, and founder of Ryerson's Diversity Institute. Many of you might know, but might not know, but Ryerson only has 4% international students. But when you actually go to their campus, you would think it's 90%. So it's a very, very interesting university in regards to diversity, all colors, shapes, forms. And Wendy is truly a change maker. She's a social innovator and a thought leader. I've had the pleasure of working with Wendy on smart cities and other initiatives. She's constantly working to level the playing field for women, rationalize minorities, Indigenous peoples, and those with disabilities. To her academic work and in her voluntary capacity, she is a champion of inclusion, creating opportunities for all and supporting technology-driven innovation. She was the driving force behind Ryerson University to become Canada's first Ashoka Change Maker campus, where arts and social work students, along with scientists, engineers, and business students, work together to drive change. She's also brought the DMZ a much-needed focus on social enterprise development through her relationship with Ashoka and Ryerson University's DI, leveling the playing field for arts and social sciences graduates, women, and other underrepresented groups. As well, she provided hands-on support and encouragement to many of our entrepreneurs at critical stages of their development. Dr. Souquier has also led the development of programs that provided more than $20 million for critical infrastructure, support for research-based innovation, and many programs to give seed money and early-stage funding for DMZ entrepreneurs. Dr. Souquier has supported Canada's innovation ecosystem by promoting research, commercialization, and social and economic change, working with business, government, and nonprofits. Her research on innovation systems and best practices has helped shape policy and practice, and her focus on results has helped strengthen our efforts in Canada, and I'm very proud she's my friend. Wendy, please come to the stage.
So thanks very much. I'm a professor. You know, we're used to talking in 3-hour blocks and giving people tests. So it's always a challenge to be brief. But I have written notes and I will try to stick with them. I wanted to start by thanking CATA and Canwit for recognizing my work. CATA was actually one of the first organizations to sponsor some of the work that we did on diversity in the ICT sector well over 10 years ago, when it was not quite as au courant as it is today. And they have also consistently advocated for advancing innovation in Canada, as well as for women in technology, and they've been doing it for decades. So thanks very much, John, for your work. I also wanted to thank my nominator, Fawn Annan.
Good friend.
Rhymes with, I've been saying it wrong for many years because I didn't know it was Irish. Scottish. Yeah. That wasn't in my notes. But Fawn previously won a Sarah Kirk Award and spearheaded the nomination. And I was laughing when she announced that we have created a troublemaking committee. That was what it was called? Because a number of the previous winners of the Sarah Kirk Award are definitely trailblazers and do more than talk about diversity and inclusion. Whenever I'm asked to speak briefly about this issue, I'm never really sure whether to focus on the progress that has been made or what remains to be done. And I have been doing this for a long time, in fact, for 30 years, ever since the Montreal Massacre, when some of you may recall, a report came out entitled More Than Just Numbers, which was looking at women in the tech sector. And as was mentioned previously, I am rather sad to say that 30 years later, there are actually fewer women in computer science than there were when we started. There are marginally more women in engineering. And the point that I think is important about women in engineering is the variance among the schools. So for example, the Lassonde School at York University is targeting 50% women in its new engineering program. Queen's is over 30%. Some of the Quebec universities have been over 30% for a long time. But there are other institutions that shall go nameless that are around 10. What that tells you, and this is really, really important in my view, it's not the pool, right? It's not the pool, it's the intentionality, it's the processes, it's the kinds of programs, it's the pedagogy, and it's the extent to which they think those issues are important. So I do think that we should recognize that there's been progress, but we should also be taking a very hard look at what works and what doesn't work, because there have been lots of good intentions and lots of rainbow posters and lots of astronauts going into the schools telling us that science and technology are good, but it's not really producing results. And one of the things that I'm really interested in is leveraging what we know about innovation and innovation processes to really drive change, trying to really understand the levers that will shape organizational and individual behavior. And it's not just with respect to women in technology, engineering, computer science, it's also women in entrepreneurship. I'm leading the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub, which is part of the federal government's women entrepreneurship strategy. And while the percentage of women in entrepreneurship is growing, it's still only 16% if you look at majority owners of SMEs, and it's less than that in the tech sector. If we look at women in leadership roles, if we look, for example, at women on boards, you see a similar pattern where there's definitely improvement. There are definitely more women on boards and in the C-suite than there were in the past. But 40% of corporate boards still have no women, 0. I think it's California that's just introduced a law which is really interesting as an alternative to either comply or explain or quotas, where what they've done is made it illegal to have no women. So they haven't told you how many women you have to have. They just have said that it's illegal to have none. And I thought that was a bit interesting. But again, with corporate boards, we see exactly the same phenomena that I mentioned with the engineering schools. You see some boards that have over 40% women, and you have some that have none. That tells you that it's not the pool, it's the intentionality. So we have to look, in my view, when we're thinking about issues of gender and diversity and inclusion more broadly, at the gap between the words and the actions, and what works and what does not work. And it's interesting because I've been doing this for a while, and while people were speaking earlier, I was reminded of a quote that said, obstacles to the practical use of computerized health records exist, but they will disappear in a few years. That was written in 1990. Okay? And I think that this is one of the things that we really have to be attentive to when we're thinking about both our innovation strategy as well as our commitments around diversity and inclusion. Innovation is not about making stuff, right? We have amazing technology, there's no question. The investments and the results that research and development are producing, amazing. 30% of SMEs in Ontario don't have an internet presence. There's a huge gap between the potential of the technology, and nowhere is this more true than in healthcare, and its actual application. And I think that that's something we really have to grapple with, because innovation is about doing things differently. It's not about making new stuff. How does this relate to my interest in inclusion? Well, what I would argue is science, technology, engineering, and math are essential, but insufficient. The barriers to health technology adoption are actually not technological. They're not the purview of engineers and computer scientists. They're actually policy issues, regulatory issues, human behavior, organizational issues, incentive issues. Those are the domain of social sciences and humanities. So the thing that I think is really interesting in terms of how we conceptualize some of these issues is not to restrict our thinking to how we get more women into science, technology, engineering, and math, although clearly that's important. But how we think about the role of other kinds of people, of hybrids, people who understand organizational objectives, but are literate enough in the technology to understand how you can actually match solutions to problems rather than looking for problems your solutions solve. And if you start to do that, and you make space for more than just STEM grads, and the president of Microsoft recently has come out and said, we have to be looking harder at social sciences and humanities grads. Guess what happens? The women appear, right? Because those are disciplines. Even management would be another example where there are lots of women. So I think when we talk about digital skills, when we talk about the talent gap, we have to really reconceptualize what we're doing. And there's so many opinion leaders and decision makers in the room tonight. I really couldn't help but challenge you all to start rethinking your strategies around diversity and inclusion, because doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different outcomes is not the most effective way to proceed. So I hope you'll join me along with the previous Sarah Kirk Award winners and recipients in doing everything that you can to help advance the diversity agenda, because I do really think that an inclusive innovation strategy is what will put Canada on the global map. And in the words of my friend, Vicki Saunders, who's the founder of SheEO, do not just level the playing field, change the game. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Wendy. Our next award is in fact a double header of an award sponsored by the Telford School of Management. The Management Private Sector Innovation and/or Leadership Award is presented to those in the private sector who have significantly expanded the frontiers of Canada's advanced tech industry. Recipient must have demonstrated consistent innovation and leadership. And I'd like to invite Terence Kolka, the Executive in Residence at the Telford School of Management, to present the award.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, John. And good evening. I'm going to present two awards tonight. And the first of the Telford Private Sector Leadership Award I'm going to present goes to Mr. Carl Rodriguez, the founder, president, and CEO of SOTI. Carl's vision has inspired a future of endless possibilities. For technology has led to the growth of one of the world's most trusted providers of mobile and IoT management solutions, his company SOTI, which is based right here in Canada. The key to SOTI's global success has been Carl's innate ability to identify what solutions are needed for the future and not just solve present problems of the day. Before concepts like mobile first technology or enterprise mobility management, Carl was already contemplating how to give business the confidence and control to seamlessly implement advanced technology. This resulted in the development of the SOTI One platform, an innovation that reduces the cost, complexity, and downtime of business-critical mobility. Under Carl's leadership, SOTI has scaled from a one-man startup to a multi-billion-dollar company headquartered in Mississauga with close to 1,000 employees working in over 10 offices worldwide. They serve over 17,000 customers and over 4,000 channel partners across 170 countries. You know, that's a truly great achievement. But for Carl, it has always been more than successful technology solutions. He has had a strong vision for the growth of Canada's innovation economy and the important role that each individual plays in its success. As a regular contributor to publications such as the Globe and Mail and the National Post, Carl encourages local and national governing bodies to prioritize identifying and supporting homegrown technology companies who are eager to stay in Canada and help propel the country to be a nation of innovators. Carl has made his personal mission to champion the success of Canadian technology innovators and help our country create a unique legacy. Please join me in congratulating Carl and Soti for this outstanding achievement. And accepting the award on Carl's behalf is Shadi El Qadri, who is the Chief Innovations Officer at Soti. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate being recognized tonight. Fortunately, Cart couldn't be here with us, but his travel schedule was a bit challenging. But Cart can interview him. No problem. Yes, ma'am. Thanks. So not a lot of people know about Soti, but we are an example of how a Canadian company could start small and can grow. And it takes a lot of tenacity, it takes a lot of hard work, and obviously it takes a lot of innovation for the long term. Fortunately, the vast majority of the startups in this country end up being either sold or they leave or they give up too soon. A lot of business plans are built with an exit strategy in them just before the business is even launched. And that's sad because we build the IP, and the IP is the currency of the future. That's going to pay for the prosperity of our nation, our kids, and our grandkids. So my call to startups: don't give up, right? Build it for the long term. Innovate. You got help. Go overseas. You got a lot of help. Trade commissioners, right? Ailish is here tonight. They help us at every step of the way. But don't be afraid to step outside the boundaries and honestly push the envelope. We create a lot of great things in this country, a lot of great innovations, but unfortunately, they end up being non-Canadian too soon. And that's something that is sad. So we need to change that. So I'm calling on everybody to please, all the startups, don't give up, right? Keep it and think for the long term and innovate for the long term. You can do it. Thank you.
Haven't you been following me in the show?
Sitting over there in the corner. Yeah, he's got a script.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Terrence, part two.
Okay. Thanks again. Okay. The second Telfer Private Sector Leadership Award I'm going to present goes to Mr. Duncan Fraser, the founding partner of Notitia LLP. Mr. Fraser is a leader within the practice of privacy and technology law in areas such as e-discovery and litigation experience in mass litigation management, fraud claims, Aboriginal law, environmental law, and injunctive relief. Duncan spent most of his career as a general counsel for the Department of Justice. He then opened his own firm, Notitia, which specializes in e-discovery. Since 2003, he has led the firm's transition from paper to electronic document review. A focal point was privacy law, one of the many fields of law that is developing into a more electronically based practice, with ATIP, FOI requests and breaches ever so common. Mr. Fraser has been an integral part of contributing to the adoption of technology-based resources within private law sector, privacy law sector. Through both governmental and privacy sectors, he has been involved with key committees and initiatives to bring e-discovery to the forefront. Through platforms such as Ringtail, Mr. Fraser has trained and provided expertise that has made ATIP, FOI requests and document review easier and more efficient. Under his direction, the Federal Department of Justice became a regular leader, a public leader in electronic discovery through the implementation of Ringtail for document review. Mr. Fraser also is an important member of the Ontario e-Discovery Implementation Committee, the Sedona Canada Working Group 7, and the Information Governance Institute, which all aim to implement the use of electronic delivery, litigation support, and paperless proceedings through the leadership of their members. Duncan has also authored several articles on information governance and the importance of firms implementing governance strategies, not just by technology, but by utilizing and investing in expertise. Altogether, Mr. Fraser has significantly contributed to the practice of privacy law through his vision for a more advanced technology-based future, which highlights the need for software that can effectively and efficiently identify and investigate breaches and handle ATIP FOI requests with ease. Please join me in congratulating Duncan. Duncan?
Well, thank you very much. I promised I would be brief. I spent 20 years as a litigator for the federal government. I'm used to working on a clock. First, thank you, CATA. Thank you, Telfer and Terrence for the kind introduction. As you can tell, being a lawyer who's significantly involved in technology and information law, it's really hard to describe exactly what I do. I spent, as Terrence said, the early part of my career as a litigator for the Department of Justice. And if you want to get seriously motivated for transformation, innovation, and technological change, that's a great place to work. 4 years ago, I dropped the mic at Justice as general counsel and left to start a law firm that would deal exclusively with what I see as a necessary transformation of the practice of law, to move from the paper-based paradigm and briefcases and photocopies moving into court into a more digital reality. I think this profession is facing a massive change, and I wanted to be part of the transformation instead of waiting for the wave to hit me from behind. We are Noticia. We're a bilingual law firm located here in Ottawa. Our business really is to help other law firms accelerate the transition from paper to a digital practice for privacy, risk, compliance, and litigation. And you can imagine starting this out in the early days, we would walk into law firms talking about AI and how technology would help them, and all they were reading in the papers was rooms full of lawyers replaced by computers. It's like, welcome, come in. It's changed a lot now, and I can say, having heard some of the speakers tonight, we are seeing a great deal more excitement. There's a lot happening in this place. Yes, there are roles being replaced. There's no question technology brings change. But what we're also seeing is that these roles are being replaced by great opportunities, and great opportunities for new talent and better opportunities for better client relations and better outcomes. So it is a very exciting time to be in legal practice. My business partner, Philippe Collin, who's here with me, we've been welcomed into the Ottawa legal market with open arms. We are equally welcomed by the technology providers. We're a great consumer of AI. We're interested in everything that gives us the opportunity to do what we're doing now differently. It's not always better. We don't get it right the first time, but we're certainly seeing great change as a result. Anyway, I would like to say thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much for the award. It is a great sign that the Ottawa community is recognizing, and the Canadian community recognizing change in the profession. Thank you.
Congratulations, Duncan's company in Ottawa, and Soji, the first winner, is based in Toronto. Now we move to the Public Sector Leadership Award, presented to an individual or organization from the public sector, recognizing a significant contribution to technology. And I would ask Joanna Lobot, the operations manager at the Lazarides Institute in Waterloo, to present the award. Joanna.
Thanks, Paul. John. I'm excited to be here tonight, representing Wilfrid Laurier's School of Business and the Lazarides Institute. Our dean, Michael Kelly, would normally be here himself to present this award, but he's home tending to a broken foot. And this is actually his script, but according to this, he wants the room to know that he broke his foot skydiving. But I won't be a part of that with such a distinguished police officer in the room. I'm not going to be part of that lie. For those of you who haven't heard of the Lazarus Institute, we proudly tout ourselves as Canada's first nationwide scale-up program. The program, now in its third year, works annually with 10 of the most promising young tech companies in the country to help them develop the knowledge and processes required to scale and compete at the global markets. So now on to tonight's Public Sector Leadership Award. This year's winner is Dr. Ailish Campbell, Chief Trade Commissioner and Assistant Deputy Minister, International Business Development, Global Affairs Canada. Ailish Campbell joined Global Affairs Canada as the Chief Trade Commissioner in Canada in March of 2017. She leads a cross-Canada team of 400 and an international team of 900 trade commissioners in 160 offices that serve Canadian business interests to help firms sell, grow, and go global. Previously, she was the General Director of Finance Canada, where she was responsible for the federal budget in policy areas including innovation and defense policy, and Vice President Policy, International and Fiscal Issues at the Business Council of Canada, where she led CEO engagement in China, Japan, and India. She began her career in the Canadian Federal Public Service as a trade negotiator on the Doha round of WTO negotiations. She serves on the advisory board of the BAMP Forum, a national, nonpartisan, not-for-profit organization promoting leadership and public policy engagement. Ailish holds a Master's of Science in Economics from the London School of Economics and a doctorate in International Relations from the University of Oxford. And on top of all that, is designated as a global leader by the World Economic Forum. The nomination this year was put forward by MindBridge AI and supported by many companies, including CATA, who was a partner in an 8-city MindBridge US tour facilitated by the Canadian Trade Commissioner Services. It's my honor to now call on Ailish Campbell up to the stage to accept the award.
So I accept this award very gratefully on behalf of our entire team. Je suis très fière de toute l'équipe globale de la Service Délégués Commerciaux. So we lead a team, an incredible team. Part of the secret sauce of this team is that in our 160 offices around the world, 70% of our staff are locals. They speak the local language, they know the local customs, they know how to sell your company to the world. So in fact, tonight I have a pretty short message. It's an invitation to every single one of you to work with the Trade Commissioner Service of Canada. We help companies find capital. We help businesses find mentors. We help you find customers. One of my favorite services is we also help you identify people you shouldn't be doing business with, which you might you might actually kind of wonder about that one. But literally, I had a CEO in Vancouver tell me he showed up and I won't even name the country, but he showed up in a place and we basically said, "You're adorable. You have no business being here. You have about another year's worth of homework before you belong here. But the great news is we have the resources to help you with that too." We're very excited that the federal government announced the trade diversification strategy in the fall economic statement, which included funding for us to take our Canadian technology accelerators global. I have with me tonight Andrea Clements and Chris Wilkie, who are the pioneers of taking this initiative global. We're moving out from 4 locations in the US to take this project global. We're taking it to India, we're taking it to places like Hong Kong and Singapore because that's where the demand is. I like to say, the future is here. It's happening in Korea, for example, where the Internet of Things and 5G is happening in more than 80 cities. Canadian companies can't wait to necessarily find their first customer in Canada, although of course many of them do. 80% of our clients will find their first market in the United States. Our objective is also to get them to profitability as quickly as possible through the CTA program the Canadian Trade and Technology Program, and then get them going global. So there's 2% of the world's GDP here, 98% of it is out there. 98% of your customers are out there, and that's what we do. The startup community is our inspiration, so I want to thank each and every one of you, particularly those of you who are business owners, who are founders, who are entrepreneurs. You're our constant inspiration. You're why we exist, and I accept this award humbly in great hopes that if you're not already working with us, like Sodi, thank you very much. I think, nothing. It's great that a bureaucrat tells you should go global, but it does kind of work better when it's a business referral. So I thank Sodi for that great referral. I will get you on video later. But in all seriousness, if you're not already working with us, as I say, tonight is an invitation. Please find out more about the Trade Commissioner Service. Come talk to us after this amazing award ceremony. Thank you so much.
Congratulations to the team. Over the years, I worked with 3 or 4 different economic development organizations, taking companies to various parts of the world. And there were always Canadian trade commissioners, and everybody raved about their ability to assist companies. This next award is given in recognition of the leader who has created an innovative new product and organization. And the award is named in the honor of the late Peter Brogy and symbolizes his ethic of personal and business success through hard work, perseverance, and community involvement. I'd like to ask Paul Laberge, representing the Peter Brogy Foundation, to present the award. Paul?
One of the hazards of giving me notes is that I don't usually follow them. We've been fortunate in having a lot of really good speakers tonight. And it prompts you to think of certain phrases. And one of them that always struck me is the Mars family, which is known for chocolate bars and M&Ms, has a slogan over its head office door, which is, by the way, one room with 35 people in it. And the slogan is, if you're overhead, you're out of here. Interesting perspective. One of the things that we've seen tonight has been people working in different sectors. And one of the things that you'll observe from Jeff's comments and others is that there's a different pace depending upon where it is you're trying to do something. And an observation for all of us to think about as we're in this room and looking ahead, and in fact relating to this particular award winner, is the difference between regulated sectors and unregulated sectors. And what I would say, and what you will observe, is that those in the unregulated sectors, which has been the case with things like Facebook and others, have very rapid development profiles. As our 2 speakers pointed out earlier, the first ones, is that healthcare represents an enormous challenge. And I guess I would say that working in healthcare, and as the chairman of the Ottawa Heart Institute, I can say that making change in healthcare is a bit like an aquafit class. You can do a lot of running, but you're not going to go that fast. And I think the reality that we all have to be aware of is that in the regulated sectors, there are considerably more fundamental partnerships, much like we're talked about with respect to our Foreign Trade Commissioner Service. It's a relationship business, and that's something that's critical. Now, the award that's being presented here is to Simon Faragna, and he is the CEO and founder of Tractic Software Inc. Now, this is a software that in 5 short years has taken a dominant position in terms of the management of physical security. They're now deployed in 410 locations with 210,000 persons under their software program. They've recently secured $45 million financing from the CATA and other investors. But equally importantly, which is more significant, is that what he's done is to translate a paper-based operation in an unregulated sector at hyper speed into something that is now software-based, providing management of people, resources, and information. And one of the things that we'll have noticed is that in 9/11, they had the information. They had too much information. What they didn't have was correlation of the information. This is one of the things that he provides, the ability to manage people, resources, information, reports in a super efficient methodology using this product. That's great. That's significant. But more important is the fact that he and his team and his organization are dedicated members of their community. They are active participants in the support of children and families victimized by sexual violence. In Montreal, they are supporters of a holiday gift drive for inner city school children, and they are also active members in the Movember campaign. It's great to have companies that are successful. It's great for companies that are successful to share that success with their communities et de faire partie de tout qui est tellement important pour notre communauté canadienne. Their company was in 2018 alone, ranked number 11 on the Deloitte Technology Fast 50, LinkedIn's top 25, and 36 in the Canadian Business 2018 startups. So you're looking at a company that is not only successful, recognized, locally based, and part of a community. And with that, Simon.
Here I am.
Thank you. My God, I didn't get compliments like this for a long time. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you very much for giving us the honor. We're super happy to be here and to learn more actually about CATA and what it does for society. I'd like to first I did my thank you. Now I'd like to talk to the camera if it's good. So we talk today a lot about innovation. We talk a lot about all the great technologies like AI, machine learning, everything that's coming up and how fast it's going right now. But we always forget something, is you need that one person, that one crazy guy that's going to be super perseverant, that's going to take all his energy, that's going to put his life on the side for a couple of years to be able to build that business. These are the entrepreneurs. And this is, a lot of people see entrepreneurial as, it's a glamorous thing and these events and galas and this, but this is not the reality. This is people that they'll be take a hit on their personal life, that go crazy, that fail, that go through really hard times, going through lawsuits, failures, loss of clients, people management and all that, and scaling. So today I want to talk to those people. I want to talk to the future people that maybe are watching us. So today, as we saw, if you have an idea, you don't need an education. You don't need, I love the university, by the way, but you don't need, if you have an idea, if you have something that can improve the life of someone, and you really strongly believe in it, and you're ready to jump it, take it. We need you to build the futures. We need you to bring those innovations to an industry. We need people in Canada right now to solve real life problems. Everybody has ideas, but really, people have the courage to take those ideas and bring them to market and work really hard. These are the people we have to encourage. And as a society, especially in the province of Quebec, a lot of and Ontario is different, but in Quebec, a lot of entrepreneurs are being scrutinized and they're being failure, they go in newspaper, but they have tried. So it's always easy to look at somebody, an entrepreneur that's failed, and look at them and say, ha ha ha, it didn't work, look at that. Well, have you ever tried? So we need to build that culture of entrepreneur in Canada in general, and also in Quebec. So if you are listening, if you're 16 years old, you have this crazy idea, you have a sense for technology, and you have a sense for solving real life problem, and you're ready to go on a crazy journey, well, go for it, my friend, because we need you. Thank you.
Good advice. Congratulations. I heard a great definition of entrepreneur, and that is someone who looks at problems or difficulties as an opportunity. It's not a problem. It's not a difficulty. It's an opportunity for me to do something different. Our next award, sponsored by the Sprott School of Business, presented to a Canadian organization for an outstanding engineering development, resulting in the production of a world-class product or family of products. And this product will have proven itself in its design and market success to have enhanced Canada's reputation around the world. I would like to ask Dean Linda Schweitzer from the Sprott School to present the award. Dean?
Hello. Always have to do that. Like Wendy, I'm also a professor, and it's very difficult for me to stand up here and not lecture on women in STEM. But don't worry, I also have notes. The 2019 Sprott School of Business at Carleton University Outstanding Product Achievement, as chosen by the Award Selection Committee, goes to eSight Corporation. eSight are electronic glasses that restore or enhance sight for individuals living with vision loss. Worn comfortably like a normal pair of glasses or with prescription lenses built in, they allow a person with low vision to see in virtually the same manner as someone who is fully sighted. Most doctors have evaluated eSight as a clinic and have said that this is clinically validated pair of electronic glasses and that it's had a revolutionary impact on the lives of their visually impaired patients and has enabled them to see with unprecedented visual clarity, along with granting them true mobility and independence in their everyday lives. eSight has been the recipient of multiple product breakthrough awards and are featured all over the world, such as Time's 25 Best Inventions, New York Times, NBC, Tech Vibes, WSJ, CIX, Top 20, Fortune, Brisbane Times, and even more. Just have to go look on their website. The company's product has changed the lives of many people around the world. And its next generation platform will also be a mobile cloud computing integrated platform that leverages the latest artificial intelligence and edge AI capabilities to bring a whole new level of healthcare experience and support for their users and clients. I now call on Charles Lim to accept this award.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you, Linda. Thanks, John. Thanks, Paul. It truly is an honor to be here. So good evening, everyone. It is really appreciated. So on behalf of eSight, we are very thankful of winning this award and being recognized and being invited to this amazing gala. So let me take you guys back behind time a little bit. So let's say, imagine it was on August of 2003. There was a huge power outage that affected pretty much a good chunk of the northeastern side of North America, and there was no power. So you're sleeping in your bed, and all of a sudden, you wake up in the middle of the night wanting to get a glass of water. So what do? Everything's dark. Well, you stumble out of bed, feel your way down the stairs, hopefully you don't fall down, go to the kitchen, fidget with a lot of the different glasses, hopefully you don't break anything, and then you pour yourself a glass of water, hopefully not spilling anything, drinking that, and then putting it all away, and then going back up. So that sounds a bit challenging, but what if you had to do that every day? Thankfully, the utility actually fixed power in a few days, so you don't have to live like that for much longer. But this is actually a good metaphor for a lot of our actual users with low vision. They actually have to live with this on a day-to-day basis. So you can just imagine what they have to deal with. But what if I told you when you were planning to get out of bed that there was a lamp beside that would actually help? Well, that is actually what eSight is about. eSight for users with low vision is like the light in the face of darkness. We want to provide independence versus reliance. We want to provide sight and vision versus their low vision. That is what we do. And we believe that if you can see the world, you can change the world. And we have been fortunate in our mission that because of that, we have gathered more than 100 million views of all of the eSight activities that we've done worldwide. We've been fortunate to be recognized all over the world, winner of multiple awards. We have also been very fortunate to get a lot of easy coverage because of the mission that we actually do. So we're very thankful. And because of eSight and what we've done, thousands and thousands of users worldwide now have the ability to see their kids, see their loved ones, go back to doing what they used to do, and actually get work, feel more independent. So can you imagine for someone who has never seen their kids before, ever, for the first time seeing their child, their expressions, and being able to empathize? It's amazing. What about being able to do something that you've loved to do before, but for the last few years are unable to do it because of your low vision condition? It's priceless. What about being able to be more independent and feel more independent by being able to get back to work and feel more of a productive member of society versus a little bit more reliant? It's really revolutionary. It's priceless. And that is what we do at eSight. That is essentially our product. But we haven't actually stopped right there. Despite all of that, we are just actually beginning. With the advent of cloud, mobile, and AI, not only do we believe we can provide vision for our low vision users, we expect and we believe we will be able to raise their standard of life. So it's probably going to be pretty much similar to that of all of us as normal people. And on top of that, our technologies actually are not far off from enhanced vision, augmented reality, and mixed reality, which means that we actually believe that whatever we're building right now in Canada, which we hope to stay in Canada, hopefully, for the long run, can be leveraged for a lot of multiple industry verticals, of which we're specifically targeting healthcare to start. So long story short, we at eSight think that the future of health and healthcare is very, very bright. And we are very fortunate and glad to do our small portion to help make the world a better place. Thank you.
Congratulations. I remember doing a story with eSight back in my reporting days when they were based in Ottawa, now with a Toronto office. And at the time, I thought, what a wonderful concept. This is going to be a winning product for Canada. And indeed, it has become just that. Our last award, and I would ask John Reed to come back up on stage for the CEO Community Leadership Award. John?
By the way, I met Charles in China via video conference when he was with IMAX. So I've been working with him for a long time. We actually met last year, and we formed a friendship through video technology. So Charles, I was really pleased to see that we've attracted talent to a Canadian company, another Canadian company, and I was pleased to see that you are advancing a very important mandate. So it's good seeing you again. Last award, award that I've chosen. You can then have coffee, talk with your friends. And really what drove the choice was we have debt, we have deficit. And anytime you move into those positions, eventually you're going to have to cut back. You'll have to reduce social services. You'll have increased user fees. There's going to be social gaps. Now, how, as Canadians, how can we help play a role in bridging those gaps? Eventually, we will have to face that reality. So this year's award goes to John Bromley, CEO and founder of CHIMP, which is Charitable Impact. After more than a decade of working in corporate finance, he became involved in the charitable sector. John founded CHIMP in 2011. His vision was to use advanced technology to transform how everyone experiences charitable giving. 8 years and a Technology Impact Award nomination later, he has more than 100,000 donors, and it's all part of a web-based donor-advised fund. So he's embraced technology. John's work was really driven by the importance of creating a culture of giving. He has a background in entrepreneurship. He's founded multiple philanthropic ventures. He advises to hundreds of organizations on charitable projects. And he's helped facilitate over $1 billion in charitable giving. He and his trailblazing team are really making a difference. And going forward, they can make an even greater difference as we face those gaps. So I thought, when I looked at all the possible award winners and what we were facing, I thought the best community leader we should recognize was you, John. So please come and accept the award.
Well, I'll try to be brief to let you guys go. Thank you for being here. Thank you for recognizing Charitable Impact and for having me here today. I'm from Vancouver. So when I'm in a room like this tonight, it's so easy to see and truly believe three of the beliefs that we have at Charitable Impact. First, everyone here cares about something changing in the world. Number two, you all have something to give towards that. And thirdly, when you do give, you get something in return. So I work in the charitable giving space. The problem is not how to make you sort of more generous. Generosity lives within each of us, right? So the problem isn't how to make you generous, how to cause you to want to help others. That comes naturally. What doesn't come so naturally is how to do that through charitable giving. So the problems are a little bit more like, how do you get connected to the things you truly care about changing in the world? And how do you narrow in on those things? How do you then connect to other people who care about the same things? And ultimately, how do you believe that there's truly, how to have confidence in and believe that there's effectiveness behind your giving? Those are the concerns. So we look at that, and what we do at Charitable Impact is we say, we're going to work for you as the donor. So we work for you. We give you your own giving account. We work for you regardless of what causes you care about, regardless of what charities you choose, regardless of how much experience you have or how much money you have. Our largest account at our donor advised fund is north of 40 million, and yet both of my two sons, who are 6 and 8 year old, each earn a $10 a month charitable allowance from dad every month to spark a conversation about what they want to do with that money. And I believe it's important to go to you and to serve you as the customer, to serve you as the donor, because fundraising is starting to falter. So what you see going on in the fundraising sector is two problems that I think are important. The first is that those with the money to spend on fundraising, spend it well, get effective at it. And guess what today? The vast majority of the $16 billion that moves into the charity sector every year goes to 1% of charities. But the other problem is that ultimately, while fundraising serves the sector by raising money for charities, what it doesn't do is it doesn't develop donors. So what you see happening is fewer Canadians participating in giving, despite the fact that charities are spending more on fundraising. And just to give a quick shout out to health, which we're focused on today. First, to the universities in the room, the research into the impact on giving on the giver is extremely limited. But the evidence that has been put out through research strongly suggests that those who give, who find meaning in their life through giving, are more productive, and they're happier, and they're healthier. So please give to what you care about. Please take action with whether you do a little or a lot. Get started. It's not unlike exercise. And CATA, thank you for having me, and thank you all for being here this evening.
Congratulations, and our award winner, of course, coming from Vancouver and having to wait till the last award to get his. By the way, it's 50-42 for the Raptors in the game. That concludes the awards portion of the night. What I would ask right now is for each award winner to pick up their award, stand up, and walk over to that corner. We're going to do a group photo of all of our winners. And John says the sponsors as well. We'll cram everybody in and have a group shot. So for everybody else, desserts and coffee are out in the atrium, and feel free to indulge. And for those who want to take a picture of someone, one of the winners, feel free to make your way up there. We'll get it all set up in just a couple of moments, and away we go. Thank you so much for your attention tonight. I appreciate it. And we'll be back with edition number 35 next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're working hard. Just like this. No, I was not.
If any of the award sponsors have not made their way over to if any of the award sponsors have not made their way over to the corner here, please do so. And we're going to take a huge group shot. Thanks very much.
Okay, perfect. Have a good night. And 3, 2, one.
Wendy, black. How are you? I didn't expect to see you. You're right today. What? In person? How are you? Oh yeah, you're there too. So?
Thank you, sir.
No, my pleasure. Someone is watching the live stream right now, and I'm waiting for them. They told me to go in front of the camera when I'm all done. So just kind of wave at them. Awesome. Thank you so much.